Okay. I can't read that far, so I don't know who all's online. I see Elena and Matt Jones, but I can't tell if anybody else is, but. All right, so let's go ahead and call the City Council joint meeting with Planning Commission work session to order at 6 o'clock. We're here to talk about land use efficiency measures and the UGB amendment for growth planning 2021 through 2041. I'd like to call on Heather Richards, Community Development Director, and Evan. Is Evan going to be in person or online?
I'm going to lead tonight. Evan is part of the project, but since his role is 100% funded with our Affordable Housing Construction Excise Tax Fund, and tonight's discussion is about commercial land, we're going to keep that separated.
Okay, well then I'm going to let you start, Heather.
Great. And before I start, I wanted to share with you all, and I think that this will come as a blessing for most, is we've been talking internally about how to be more efficient with our information delivery to you as bodies, both the Planning Commission and the City Council, in terms of our staff reports and presentations. So our job is to make sure you get all the information you need to get to make good, informed decisions. For those projects that are considered quasi-judicial, which are land use applications that you're making decisions on, the law tells us how we need to present the information to you. But for those projects that are legislative, which is city-initiated efforts, we can deliver the information to you in any form that you feel it's best to receive it. So what we're going to be doing moving forward is try to ensure that our staff reports are succinct but have the information in it. We're going to work from the basis that you've already read the staff report, so we're not going to repeat that information in a presentation at City Council. We're going to try and point out what we see as the issues for you as we have the conversation with our presentation, but allow a lot of time for your deliberation and discussion to occur. We're going to, with our presentations, we will present to you and then identify areas where we think it's a good stopping point to ask questions and have deliberation. So you'll either see for those longer work sessions a couple of different stops and discussion points, and for the shorter discussions maybe we'll get through the presentation itself and then ask for questions at the end. So hopefully that helps you in terms of getting the information you need, but in a less bulky way and in a more time efficiencies. And as we work through this process, if you feel you want to make amendments to it, we're happy to have those discussions.
Okay.
So with that said, I would like to get through the presentation and then offer discussions and questions at the end of it for tonight's conversation. So tonight we're talking about our land use efficiencies work and particularly UGB amendments. We're continuing the conversation that we had from a work session a couple of weeks ago, and it's a continued conversation of land needs for our planning horizon of 2021 to 2041. More specifically, what we shared with you at that last work session, that with land use efficiency measures, we feel will meet the residential and industrial land need within our existing urban growth boundary, but we did not feel we could find the land within our existing urban growth boundary for our commercial land need. And you had some questions for us as to what does that mean in terms of process moving forward. All of this is further complicated by the fact that we're working on a deadline that was embedded in state law in terms of McMinnville needs to submit this by. We knew we wouldn't meet that deadline, and the law allowed us to enter into what's called a sequential UGB work program. That's an official request of the state to say, we understand this, the law requires this, but we have these reasons why we can't meet that. Can we enter into a different time frame with you? We did that, and based on that, the state agreed that they would extend their December 31, 2025 deadline to March 1, 2026 for land use efficiency measures and urban growth boundary amendment. So that's the deadline we're working on today. We provided a copy of the sequential UGB work plan for you in the staff report because we're going to talk about it tonight in terms of a pathway that we could pursue, which is amending that sequential UGB work plan in terms of the task and the deadlines associated with those tasks. So just to familiarize yourself with it, task 1 was actually providing the needs analysis that said we have need for additional land for residential, industrial, and commercial land to serve our community through that planning horizon of 2021-2041. And then the task 2 was, okay, we've identified need, now look at land use efficiency measures within your current urban growth boundary, and if you can't meet it within your current urban growth boundary, submit an urban growth boundary amendment. That's task 2. It's those 2 items together. To let you know some of the timing on this, because this will be part of our discussion tonight, is a finding if we do decide to request an extension on the deadline. We have to tell the state why and have basis for it. We are still waiting on the final decision document of the Land Conservation Development Commission that upholds the DLCD director's decision. So what that means is we submitted our work per the plan on March 5, 2024 for the land needs analysis. But then we got a decision from the director of DLCD that saying that they support our submittal except for one remand, and we went through that process. The director's decision was appealed to the LCDC, which is sort of the State Planning Commission, and that appeal hearing occurred on October 25, 2024. We still have not been issued the document of that decision, of that appeal hearing, since that time. So it's a year later, and we still have not received it. The LCDC did vote to uphold the director's decision, so we expect that that's what the decision will be. But until that is issued, we can't enter into the next step of the process. We don't know if the LCDC decision will be appealed as well into the circuit court. So without knowing that, we don't know what the next time frame for the process is exactly, and that delayed us getting into the land use efficiency measures work. So that would be our finding for all of this, and we have the paper trail exists to create the basis for that. So with that said, what we heard from you as City Council when we had that work session a couple of weeks ago is, can we get a UGB amendment for the commercial land need done by March 1, 2026? And I'm here to tell you we can't. That process takes a lot of time and effort to prop up, and we shared that with you at that work session. So then the question was, can we extend that UGB sequential work plan deadline past March 1, 2026? And what resources would it take to put together a UGB amendment for the commercial land so that you could give us some direction on how you want to move forward? Just to remind you of the sequential UGB process, we are in the identify land use efficiencies piece of it, and then we would go into this amend UGB to accommodate those additional land needs if required. You do not need to, we showed how we could meet the residential industrial land need with land use efficiencies, and so we'll be bringing that work to you. We still plan to submit that to the state by March 1, 2026, and we have that on our game plan on how to do that. And we also told you that we could not meet the commercial land need. At the work session a couple of weeks ago, we identified we need 159 acres, that's in the needs analysis, and we felt we could meet it with efficiencies, 88 acres, and we would have a 71 acre deficit. However, there were a lot of discussion at the work session, and I wanted to walk through that a little bit with you in terms of the commercial land need, but just to show you, again, the residential land needs and how we're meeting it. We actually will have more units of capacity with our land use efficiency measures than we actually require, so that's good. And in terms of the industrial land need, well, we're going through a process of adopting the McMinnville Airport Master Plan into our comp plan, which will add 30 acres of land into the industrial land supply. So that will also help us with that. The commercial land need, we talked about the land use efficiency measures being that the property that Linfield University asked us to take off our buildable lands inventory when we did the needs analysis, because at that time they expected that to be part of their continued master plan for development for Linfield University. And so we were not counting that as buildable land for the community. That had 44 acres of C3 zoned land in it. That's the land that's adjacent to the Albertsons complex and goes behind there. They have indicated to us that they're moving forward with putting that onto the private side and looking at developing that so we can put that back on our buildable lands inventory. So that's the one land use efficiency measure. And then we talked about McMinnville Landing and how that also includes a 44-acre retail center. We're talking about gross buildable acres, 33 net acres. And that's been in our process for master planning recently. And we'll be bringing that to you actually at your work session on October 22nd. And so our conclusion as staff was that we had the 88 acres and we had half of the commercial land deficit with these land use efficiency measures. And so we recommended not doing UGB amendment and thought that that would put additional pressure on our existing commercial land inventory along some of our commercial corridors where we felt that that pressure would be good and it would support infill and redevelopment. So then we had the question came up from Councilor Chenoweth. Well, what does that 40 acres at the McMinnville Landing actually mean? And we started looking at that in a little bit more detail. So this is our buildable lands inventory that was submitted to the state. Anything that's blue is industrial land and considered buildable, and anything that's a shade of red is commercial land and considered buildable as well. And in the analysis that we did for the needs analysis, excuse me, we identified that there was 154 acres of buildable land within McMinnville's urban growth boundary for commercial needs. 115 acres was in commercial zone, so that's what you see in red on that map. And then we had 39 acres identified in our, what we call our urban holding land, that's in the UGB, that's where we're doing the area planning right now. And that's considered neighborhood serving commercial. So that's all what was booked in terms of decision making. I want to point out to you though that some of the large swaths of land that was identified as commercial land in terms of future buildable land is there by the Evergreen campus. And then there's also, if you look at that sort of brighter red parcel there, that's what we brought in with our recent UGB work and identified it for commercial. That's a little over 20 plus acres, and they've already planted that in vines and do not intend to build that for commercial land. So even though it sits on our buildable land supply, it will not move forward serving that, that need. And part of your discussion at the last work session is what's realistic in terms of what's going to be developed commercially as well. We also did not put the 40 acres of commercial land as buildable land on that 3 Mile Lane area where you see the industrial land, so the blue. So Councilor Chenoweth asked the question, are we double counting that? And at that night, we were able to show we were not double counting that. We have since been doing more work on that master planning, and we won't be rezoning that property into commercial land. In McMinnville, we have a planned development process which allows 25% of the parcel to be used for use outside of the underlying zone as a planned development if it serves the city's needs. And so with the McMinnville Landing process, McMinnville Landing being the innovation district, there is a planned development being put together for that, and the number of acres that are assigned to the retail area is less than 25% of the overall area of the land. So we will not be actually turning the color of the map to red, if you want to think of it that way, for those 40 acres. So we will not be able to use that as a land use efficiency measure moving forward. So actually, after doing that work, thank you, Councilor Chenoweth, for pointing that out and having us dive a little bit deeper into it. We have two discussions for you tonight. One is sort of the practical discussion. So what's available to develop in the next 6 years? Our recommendation was wait till 2032 when we have to submit a new housing needs analysis. We'll do the employment land analysis at the same time. It's easier to do it mobilized that way. And that will be a checks and balance as to, you know, do we need more commercial land? And then as counselors, you continue to have dialogue and ask, well, when does that land actually turn dirt and build? And with that, we started talking about it may be 10 years after we have identified the need for it that it could turn dirt and build because of the length of time to process these things at the city of McMinnville. So there's the what's the available to develop in the next 6 years, and so that's sort of the 39 acres that are in the neighborhood serving commercial, that's in the UGB lands that we talked about. There's 44 acres that will be set aside for commercial development in McMinnville Landing, even if we're not going to change the color of the map The master plan identifies it. And there's 44 acres over there by the Linfield campus. So there's about 127 acres of clear vacant land. And then there's the additional vacant land that's identified in that buildable lands inventory map as well. However, if we do not use that 44 acres at McMinnville Landing as a land use efficiency measure, our remaining acreage that we need to meet in terms of land need, if I came to you and said, per our analysis, this is what's left that we need to meet, if we actually do it per the books and the legal adoptions, it would be 115 acres. That's the number we're going to see in terms of the land deficit for commercial property. Does that make, oh, I told you to wait till the end. I'm asking questions as we go. I'm not following my own rules.
Right.
Sorry.
It makes sense.
So we thought that that was important for you to understand that piece of it. What really can be developed in the next 6 years, and then what is our actual deficit we'll be reporting in the documents as well. So concerns expressed by City Council at the work session that we heard was the time it takes to amend the UGB and break ground on commercial land will be much longer than the 6 years. So 2032 is when we have to resubmit this work to the state. And if you look at development here and the appeal process and everything like that, I would estimate it's like 10 to 15 years before you break ground on something you've identified in your UGB, which ironically takes us to 2040, which is still in our planning horizon. Commercial land needs to serve the community, and it does several things. It provides a quality of life for our residents, so it provides access here in the community to needs and goods that they want and want as part of their quality of life. It also provides jobs, and it provides a tax base. So as a city, if you are the commercial land will provide a higher tax base for you per square foot than some of your other tax bases that you have. And then the city currently has a retail leakage problem. So we know that, we have the data for that. Our residents have to leave town to go access general merchandise. So let's talk through some of the pathways that are available. We can, if you want to do a commercial UGB amendment, we can go back to the state and talk to them about extending that deadline in that UGB sequential work plan. We had a meeting with DLCD staff and city staff and our legal counsel to talk about that and what that means. The sequential UGB work program is new for the state. It's a relatively new program. So there's only about 3 cities that are in it right now, including us, and we're the first bunch to go through it. So we're working through those issues. But we can request an amendment to the work plan, and we can request it to ask for task 2, where I said we had those 2 different processes in there, the land use efficiency measures and the UGB amendment, and divide it into a task 2 and a task 3. So task 2 would still remain land use efficiency measures with a deadline of March 1, 2026. And our request for amending the work plan would be to create a task 3, which would say we would do a UGB alternatives analysis. That's what an amendment is. And by law, we have 4 years in which to perform in the sequential work plan. So we could ask for an extension of that particular task to February 7th, 2028. And DLCD staff supported that. To do that, what would happen is we need to have we have to follow the same process we followed last time we set this up. So it would be a resolution that comes to you as City Council for action. It will describe what the amendment is and the task associated with it, and that's after negotiating through that language with DLCD staff. And then you adopt that. Then we then take that to Yamhill County, because we are also talking about county land, and we go through the process with them as well, and then they adopt it. It will have findings associated with it. The resolution adopts the findings, saying this is why we're asking for that amendment, and that's why I wanted to sort of describe that process, that delayed process of getting a decision, because we feel that that could be a justified finding for requesting the amendment. And we would have legal counsel draft that up for you. So this shows how we would take the existing work plan and sort of tie it into these 2 different tasks. We would take section A of task 2, and 1 remains in task 2, and then the rest of the actions would go into task 3 and be deferred to February 7th, 2028. In terms of the time frame that it takes to do a UGB alternatives analysis, and every UGB is different, I'm going to tell you that. Right now, I've been through 2 of them, and so I tried to take my best guess. Now, this is a very niche, targeted UGB amendment for just commercial land need, and so barring any sort of significant issue at different processes, public hearings get extended at Planning Commission, meetings with the McMinnville Urban Area Management Committee gets extended, barring that, just assuming a sort of a normal process, allowing for a couple meetings at each of the steps of the way, we think it will be about 14 months at a minimum to get the work done. And this walks you through what that looks like. So we first have to identify the study area. The study area is 1.5 mile radius from the existing UGB boundaries, and we study all the land in that. So we study it for soils, we study it for all these different factors. And then we develop findings that respond to the state law as to why the land we chosen meets all the state regulatory constraints of how you choose land for your UGB. Then we bring that to what's called the MUAMC, McMinnville Urban Area Management Commission. That's comprised of both people from the county and the city. It hasn't met in a long time. I think it hasn't met since 2007-ish or something like that. So we'd have to reconstitute it and appoint people to it, and then per our process, we would bring our recommendations and findings to them. They would review it, and then they make recommendations coming out of that committee to the Planning Commission of the city. The Planning Commission goes through the work that they do, make a recommendation to you as City Council, and then we go to Yamhill County's Board of County Commissioners as well. The resources for that, for a commercial UGB amendment is, I tried to think about how to do this in such a way that we could get it done, but do it in a similar style to the way we did the last UGB amendment that we did. So I would recommend we would have to set aside $100,000 for professional services. That would be for legal services, so the findings need to be written by legal counsel so that we can ensure it can be held up against an appeal. You don't want to get into an appeal process that's lengthy, because that's going to cost a lot more money than investing up front in the documents. And then we also need to do a utility analysis for the lands that we choose as land to bring into the UGB. So that would be third-party vendors that we would need to hire for that work. And then if we decide to do it in-house, which is what we did last time with our planning team, it would be taking several members of our planning team and assigning them to the projects, with a lead senior planner leading the project, which I think would take half of their FTE over 12 months to lead the project, and then the support system behind that. And with that, we calculated the value of the in-kind staff support of about $129,000. Now, looking at that, that's the cost of it, but we also have a current work plan that we're under that I know City Council is very interested in. And if we inserted this into the work plan, I wanted to be able to make sure I was going through that and sharing with you where I thought there might be consequences to that inserting of it. We haven't dived down into the details of this necessarily. I keep a spreadsheet of how much time it takes to move a plan forward and the staff capacity to do so. But I anticipate that we would need to start this process in August of 2026 to be able to get it to the state by the deadline of February 7th of 2028. And doing that, we would probably need to delay the downtown master plan update to about 2028. And the reason for that is, if you look at our work plan, so this is our work plan that you've seen before, many of our items are due to be concluded sometime around the starting of the third quarter in 2026. So that's where we could start picking this work up. But the two big pieces that still are going to be continuing past that third quarter of 2026 is the TSP update, and then also the downtown master plan update. So the TSP update we need to get done done, excuse me. So our recommendation would be that we would look at the downtown master plan to update as perhaps a discretionary item that we can shift if we need to shift it to do the commercial UGB amendment. The work that we have in front of us for just that first item in terms of getting things into the state that we need to get to them for the land use efficiency measures for the industrial and residential land. It's in your staff report. It's identified here. We've already identified the dates that we need to notice DLCD and start the public hearings for that. If we wanted to do the sequential UGB work plan amendment, we would like to begin that working and either get it to you at your city council meeting on October 28th, and I can tell you we won't make that because we need to get that information to Claudia by Thursday, or November 11th. And then we would then take it to Yamhill County and try to get it through Yamhill County by December 31st so we can get it to the state. The state has 90 days to review UGB sequential work plan amendment, but they said they don't think it will take the full 90 days. So if we can get it to them by the end of the calendar year, they feel confident they can respond to that. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Heather. Any commissioners or counselors have any questions? I'm sure Counselor Chenoweth, you do. Let's start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have several. First, with the, if we go forward with a sequential UGB, we're going to be asking for the 115 acres. Is that correct? Because we don't have an accounting for where that other land.
Yeah,
Because
well,
we're not calling the land in McMinnville Landing actually commercial. We're going to have to go for the full 115.
yeah, we're not turning the color on the map a different color, so I can't use it for that purpose. But I guess I would say what we're going to do is show need of 115 acres. Now, legally, by law, you don't have to meet all your commercial land need. That's a discretionary decision of the decision-making body, yourself, city council. So we'll be showing the land need as 115 acres. The question would be if you want to meet all 115 acres or you want to do less. And that actually could be something you determine as we go through the evaluation of the study area. Commercial land, you know, is unique. You want it located in certain places that can accommodate it. So we'll want to go through that and see if it makes sense. But do we have 150 acres that make sense?
Question number 2 is, we're already part of the way through this sequential UGB, correct? Mm-hmm. How far into this process, if you were to say 0 to 100%, how far into this process are we at this point?
It's hard to answer that because it's set up via task, right? So task 1 is done and submitted. It may get appealed to the circuit court. So if your question is, what's our resources that we're going to have to put into work beyond just the UGB amendment that I described to you?
It's actually the reverse. What are we wasting if we don't move forward?
Oh.
That's my bigger question.
Okay, and we talked about that as well with DLCD staff. So there was a question of, does the data get old and can we not use the data if we want to do a UGB amendment past February 7th, 2028? And the answer we got at the time when we were visiting with DLCD staff, now they always caveat it and say they're not the Department of Justice, so this isn't a legal decision of the state. But if your EOA, your economic opportunity analysis, is acknowledged and it shows the deficit, you can meet that deficit with the UGB amendment anytime thereafter.
Okay. And Mayor,
Did that answer your question?
It does, sort of. I mean, I get what you're saying. You're saying, in other words, it's never wasted. We can do it at some point in time later. And I've expressed it multiple times, I don't want to not finish this process up. I feel like the sequential UGB is an opportunity we have to not have to go through the full process, and the full process killed us for so many years that I'd like to take advantage just while we have it.
And I would say, I think, I don't want to speak for people who would be opposition, but we have heard the discussion of when is the data too old, and you really should be revisiting that.
Yeah. Can I ask one more? Okay. Third question. One of the things that I have is near to my heart, and it's bothered me since before I ran the first time back in 2018, and with the outgoing of the bowling alley, is just increased that concern is we don't have a lot of privately owned amenities for young people in this community. Am I right in assuming virtually all privately owned amenities would fall in commercial land that would fit the kind of things that young people would need to do? Or want to do?
I wanted to look at the zoning ordinance to verify this, but yes, I think so. The community center and rec center is not identified for commercial land right now, but our industrial zone allows a public facility there, and that's how we define that location. In terms of the question of a private facility, we would have to look at the zoning ordinance and really see if it fits in there. There's been some that have nestled in, like I think we have a CrossFit in the industrial zone. But yes, if you're talking about a larger facility for young people, a private side recreation center type thing, I don't think so. But I want to verify that.
You think it would be commercial?
Yeah, I think it would be commercial.
Okay.
Let me see if I can look it up right now.
That plays, in my mind, part of the discussion that we're having here is that, right? Because when I was a kid growing up, we had a roller rink, we had 2 bowling alleys, we had an under 18 dance area, we had 2 youth arcades. There was a tons of things for young people to do, and right now there's nothing.
Councilor Geary?
Is that a function of not having enough commercially zoned space?
I think land is definitely an issue. I've been talking to multiple people that are looking to do something, and land is an issue.
Huh. Okay.
So am I clear, so you had asked if the information that we have now, like, do we have to decide now to do this, or we can still use the data and decide in another year? Isn't that what Heather said?
So
I make sure I understand that.
I heard there's 2 questions in there and there were 2 answers, right?
Okay.
So if you do apply if we, the city, apply for amendment to the UGB work plan, we could ask for a deadline on that of February 7th, 2028. So, and we would still have the opportunity to say we're not meeting the commercial land need. So let's plan that out over the next 7 or 8 months. Something comes up and we decide we don't have the capacity to do the work, or we don't want to do the work, we can get back and say we've decided that we're not going to meet that land need for that task. The other question that Councilor Chenoweth was asking that I answered as well is, beyond the sequential UGB work plan, can we still do the work down the road? I think I heard.
My primary question was in the reverse. I don't want, I've been very clear, I'm very interested in keeping this thing moving. I don't want to waste what we've done. I don't want to, inertia, when you drop something, is hard to pick back up. So I was trying to figure out the cost associated with dropping the ball.
Okay.
I think my question, though, is the opposite, is we've done this, but can we still use it, not get rid of it, but still use it in a while if we choose to?
Yeah, so we can, my understanding, and it hasn't been verified by legal opinion, is that we could still use the identified need in the economic opportunity analysis after it's been acknowledged. So it's gone through the appeal process, back down, it's been approved. Anytime we need to, that we decide we want to meet the need. Now, I would say to you, yeah, I'm just going to leave it there.
One other question I have, during this process, has anybody looked at current commercial vacancy rate? Do we have that information to know just, there's commercial property out there?
Right. So what the buildable lands inventory does is it's not looking at your vacancy rates, because that's a market-driven issue.
Exactly.
It's looking at your land itself and the ability to build on the land for additional built environment, right?
Right.
So it's assuming that your, structures have a normal vacancy rate that ebbs and flows through the market. And then what are additional land that you would need to continue to build on to support your growing community?
I just think that's something to keep in mind. Anybody down here have a question?
And then I do want to share, I'm looking at the industrial zone right now. In the M2 land, which is interesting to me, so it's allowed in the M2, which is our highest, what we consider our heavy industrial land, and our industrial land nests in each other, so it's the last one. We do allow privately owned and operated facilities planned, located, and laid out for modified and oriented for functional use for leisure time activities as a conditional use in the M2 zone, which means it would not be allowed in the M1 zone or the ML zone.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Commissioner Murdoch. I think I'm trying to see this online, sorry. I have glares.
Yes,
Elena, I
thank
can't hear you.
I wanted to piggyback on, I think, what maybe one of the mayor's concerns was in PAC work for the Southwest Area Plan, it had some concerns that community members brought up about that area that will be bringing on, down the line, they'll be bringing on potentially 2 neighborhood commercial centers, neighborhood activity centers. I forget the exact term. And just concerns around whether or not the city of McMinnville and its residents can support that much more commercial land. And I guess that's a concern that I've heard out there. And this, my second kind of point, I think tails along with that, in that is this work more important, and I guess this is a matter of opinion perhaps for the council, and maybe Director Richards could put some thought into this as well, does this feel more important than the downtown work that's currently on the schedule?
Do you want me?
Yes.
Okay. That's a great question. So we did bring our staff recommendation to you, and that was that we do feel there's enough commercial land right now on our horizon to develop on. And the downtown master plan update, there's a lot of moving parts and discussions that are going to be impactful to the downtown. And we're either going to be reacting to it or we're going to be proactive with it. And I would suggest, since the downtown is sort of the heart of the community, that that's something you'd really want to be proactive with.
Another question. So the, what, $229,000, I think was the total amount that you had there, 100,000?
Yeah, my estimate.
Yes. And that currently is not within your budget, correct? So this would be additional funds to find, or do you have this within the budget that's assigned?
The 100,000 for the third, the staff, the in-kind staff time is moving the planning around, so
Okay.
eliminating something that's on our agenda right now. The 100,000 is what I calculated as need for a third-party vendor. If we didn't start the work until August 2026, that would be an ask of the planning department for the next fiscal year budget.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? Councilor Chenoweth?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up the string of questions that the mayor was bringing up. If we do not move, our time frame to do this sequential UGP under this amendment, regardless of whether we move today or we wait a year, is still capped to 2028. Is that correct?
Yes, so if I want to make sure I understand your question. We would ask for a deadline of February 7th, 2028 in the next 2 months to amend that UGB work plan. And when we start the work would be up to us.
Okay. What I heard the mayor asking was we could pick this up at any time down the road. Can we ask later for this amendment, or do we have to do it now? Are we tied to now as being that time that we're asking for this amendment?
We're tied to now because right now we have a deadline of this work in that sequential UGB work plan of March 1, 2026. So that's the time in which we can get the work done. Right now, that's on the books.
So if we're going to get this land expanded in this process and not through a standard UGB process, then we are capped to that 2028 timeline, but we can wait some time as long as we give you enough time to complete it before the end of that 2028 timeline.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any additional cost just for the ask?
No, so that's the resolution that I talked about that, well, actually, let me take that back, since we have contracted attorney time right now. So there would be costs in terms of drafting the findings for the resolution. I don't expect it to be that bad, because it's a fairly simple lift. And then it would be coming in with the resolution to you as city council, and then going to the Yamhill County for their approval as well. So it'd be staff time.
Counselor Peralta?
Thanks, Heather. What would be the consequence of failing to hit the deadline, the February 2028 deadline?
If we ask for it and don't do it, I don't think there would be consequences, because you aren't required to meet your need for commercial land. So what we would be saying is, we want to do UGB alternatives analysis for the land need that we can't meet, and we can get back to them and say, we've elected not to meet that need. I don't know, I don't think that there would be issues, I don't know. You want to weigh in?
Tyler, is that a no, or I don't know?
Yeah, I have not done much or any analysis on this question, but I am agreeing with where Heather is going, that I don't believe there would be any type of punishment or issues. We just have lost the opportunity to move forward
That's a
with it.
consequence. So would that actually forestall our ability to use the sequential UGB process if we ask for the deadline, don't hit the deadline?
Yes, yes, so that I can answer you. So by law, the sequential UGB work plan only has a 4-year window in it. So we submitted and started it February 7th, we got approved for it February 7th of 2024. So that work plan can only have a 4-year window. That's how we came up with February 7th, 2028.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Counselor Gary?
So for this project, I know you're bringing this information to us now, but like the transitional work housing stop that went out due to the council identifying the work plan, discussion that wanted to happen, we kind of stopping this as well, and kind of are going to have a robust discussion on what all we're moving forward, this included, at a later date? Or is it this project we want direction on now, or is this just to get us understanding of what this project means when we get to the work plan discussion?
Yeah, so couple things in there. We have planned a work session in December to go over the long-range planning work program with City Council. The transitional housing amendments were put to the side when we applied for a grant with the state, which I was going to share during department head reports, to hire somebody to help move that forward as part of our housing production strategy. We did get the grant award, so that will be moving forward, and we have the time frame for that established. But the work program, work session with City Council is scheduled for December. Unfortunately, for us to be able to do a sequential amendment to the sequential UGB work plan, we would need to get that into the state by the end of this calendar year, December 31st, 2025. And so we would need a resolution from the City Council before then, and then we would need to be able to get on an agenda with the Board of County Commissioners after you pass your resolution to also get their approval and to pass something, and then we submit it to the state. So I'm not sure we can do that the same night as the work session that we have planned in December, because I'm not sure we would be able to get into the Board of County Commissioners' business meetings in time.
So the deadline efforts we want to keep going on, but the non-deadline efforts will pause until that work session.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I think the transitional housing paused to wait until that work session happens. Is that correct?
The transitional housing paused because we applied for a grant to be able to hire somebody to do that work instead of having staff do it. So we wanted to find out, if we got the grant or not, and we learned that October 2 or something of that nature.
Oh, okay.
Recently, yes.
Okay, never mind.
Counselor Peralta?
Thank you, Mayor. Heather, in your analysis on this, have you mentioned, I think, that Canby and Malala are also using the sequential UGB method?
I mentioned there were two others, so you must have looked it up. That's great.
Have you talked to the other planning departments that are using this? Have you gotten any feedback on the timelines? Because this is a new process for the state. You said we were the first ones to do it. There's only a couple of other cities that have done it. And what I'm wondering is, if other cities are having difficulties with the timelines, same ones that we are?
I have not talked to them. I didn't even think to do that, so I apologize. I think the way that the sequential UGB work program is set up in the law is the cities sort of dictate what they feel they need in terms of a time frame based on best practices. So for instance, when we passed the resolution initially to get into this program, and I forgot when we did it, I think it was late 23 or 24, that we identified what we thought would be the time frame in which to do it. DLCD got back to us and said, do you think you can do it a little bit quicker? Are we looking at this and that? And we were like, yes, I think we can. We didn't anticipate the appeal to LCDC for task 1, which is the needs analysis, and then the year wait to get a decision document out of that appeal process so that the appellants, and so that we could find out if the appellants plan to appeal it further. So that wasn't anticipated as a disruptor in the time frame, if you want to think of it that way, when we were putting it together.
The reason that I'm asking is that I'm wondering if this could be something that we go back to the legislature for and ask for an extension in the law.
I mean, that 4-year period that's written in the law? Yeah, but I don't know that we would get that done by our March 1 deadline.
So-
Right, it would be after that deadline. But if they changed the law in the short session so that it were 6 years, I guess we would still be subject to the original.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Write it into the law. Yeah.
Yeah, they could do that.
Any other questions? Yes, Brian?
Just a question of when this goes to the county, is there any other commissions or subgroups that have to get approval before the Board of Commissioners can approve it? Is there?
For the UGB work plan?
Right.
No. So the way the law is written, it says that the county planning department needs to approve it. Ken Friday and I have talked about that, and in his role, he would like to take it to the Board of County Commissioners to get their support of him approving it, so that's what we did last time.
All right, any other questions? So it does sound like we could say yes to, I just want to see to say that we'd like to consider it, but we as a council don't have to actually move on that, make a final decision until midsummer of next year, correct? Give you 14 months, get to council.
Well, you would have an action item for the resolution to amend the UGB work plan in November.
Okay, but just for that change, but you wouldn't move forward in trying to move the UGB at this point?
Yes, no, we wouldn't do that until we get
Right.
direction from city council.
Exactly, so. Any other questions? Anything else? Okay. I guess I will close the work session unless you had something additional you want to share.
Just trying to find out if I'm bringing a resolution in on November 11th.
You want to, we can do a little shaking of heads here. It looks like we have,
We're not actually meeting on the 11th, we're meeting on the 12th.
In November, early November.
Wait, can I get some clarity on the resolution that,
Yeah, so our next step, if we were going to take one to pursue a commercial UGB amendment, would be to amend the sequential UGB work plan that we have with the state right now. And to do that, we need a resolution by city council adopting the findings as to why we need to do that and what the sort of game plan is. So what's the task that we're going to amend and what's the new deadline for that task?
Right.
And that's by resolution of city council.
But it doesn't commit us.
But we
Is that right?
don't actually have to do that, right? We don't have to amend it. We can just choose with the commercial land to not amend it, to not,
You can choose not to meet your commercial land deficit with a UGB amendment.
correct.
Yes.
Then I would not support a resolution to push forward with the amendment. Because I would say that between the 44 acres of Linfield and the whatever color we want to call it of the McMinnville Landing, that between the 88 acres, that would be the largest sheer volume of commercial building this community has seen in possibly ever in its time frame. Within that same timeline. So I don't see a need for our staff to move forward with trying to find another 115 acres to bring into the urban growth boundary, because we just don't see growth like that.
Okay. Any other comments? Adam, how do you want to proceed?
I mean, if you want to move forward, then I think we need to put it on that November 12th. I know I heard Scott that he doesn't want to move forward, but really, if we're going to meet that March 1st deadline, we need to move forward with the resolution on the 12th. And you guys need to recognize that by doing that, you're pushing out the downtown master planning effort, and we still will have a robust discussion at the December work session around the entire long-range planning. But as far as tonight's decision, know that at a minimum, the downtown master plan will be pushed out to move this forward.
So will we push forward even if we don't move forward? That's where I guess I'm confused, is by changing and saying we may want to do this, that is changing the workload?
If you guys vote on that resolution on the 12th and say, yeah, you want to push this forward, you're going to put a workload on the planning department. So, you're going to eat up capacity of that planning department if we move forward. Even if you decide before it finishes to pull that off, you're still going to eat up some capacity to get that ball rolling, or keep that ball rolling, which is what Councilor Chenoweth and Councilor Peralta spoke to.
Okay, well,
So
thank you for clarifying.
I think what we can do is, so for the two-part process, which I think is what the mayor's getting at, one is the resolution that amends the work plan deadline, and two, can we, after we've amended the work plan deadline, come next, let's pretend the summer of 2026, decide we're not pursuing the commercial UGB amendment? I think what we could do is, if there's interest, we could bring in as an action item the resolution in the November meeting. In the meantime, I can visit with legal counsel about that question. What does it mean if you amend the work plan to say we're going to do this task by this deadline and then choose not to do that task? For the question that you had asked us previously, just get the definitive legal answer for you and bring it to that November meeting so you can have that conversation and take a vote and decide how you want to move forward.
Does that please everybody? 'Cause I'm not ready to move forward to add to your capacity right now, and that's what I want to make sure that I am not doing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so if it's something that you can come and we can give a definite answer in November, I'm okay with that. I just don't want to agree to putting more capacity on now. Councilor Peralta.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with that position. I think I like having the flexibility to do this if we decide to go forward with it. So I think taking that first step makes sense. But I think we still have a decision to make as far as whether we're going to actually add this to your workload. That's my perspective. And Sorry if you couldn't hear me.
Counselor Tukalski?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Director Richards, how far out would it push the plan for downtown again?
If we decided to do the UGB amendment.
Yes.
I haven't done all the calcs, but my suggestion is you're probably pushing it out to 2028 after we get this UGB work done.
And that's a push of how long?
That's a push of right now, probably 2 years.
Okay.
To clarify, Dan, that's also if you as a policy body move forward with the TSP before the downtown master plan. So in that December work session, that's going to be one of the levers you guys pull is if you prioritize the TSP before the downtown master plan. So the other part of that equation would be is if you move forward with the downtown master plan in place of the TSP, now you're pushing the TSP out to pursue this commercial UGB. And so I think it's important that as far as the sequence of how the long-range planning works, is that we stick to that robust discussion in December. But regardless, you have some big projects that this is going to move out, from my recollection, about a year.
Well, how far have we pushed the TSP out already? How many years?
We've pushed the TSP out probably about 4 years at this point in time.
Right, and so we're already hurting in that area.
What's that?
We're already hurting in that area.
Yes.
That's scheduled though, right? We do have that now on the work plan as a scheduled work plan?
That's what the interim city manager is discussing. We have a work plan that we're going to come and talk to you about to get some direction on moving forward. With 2 large planning processes that have not been initiated, which is the TSP and the downtown master plan update, and we'll talk through what has been initiated and is underway, and the time frame for those, and then when to bring those 2 projects in.
Okay.
Counselor Tukalski?
Yeah, may I ask one more question, Mayor? What's your staffing level like right now? How many people are you down? How many?
All of our budgeted positions are full.
Okay, so you're at maximum staffing, but everyone's already at max capacity, I presume?
When we talk about capacity to support our long-range planning work program, we're talking about more than just the planning staff. It impacts other internal teams as well, including our engineering team. And so we work very closely with them on capacity to support the efforts, and that will be part of our discussion come December.
Okay.
The planning team feels it can support the program right now.
Thank you.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Just want to follow up on the conversation about capacity. That assumes also that we don't get grant money for stuff like a downtown master plan, correct?
Still takes staff time.
That would still take staff time, but with grant money, we hire more staff, right, to fulfill it?
Trying to figure out what you were asking. Each of our planning efforts still take project management, and so those larger projects like the TSP and the downtown master plan are assuming that the staff support for it is project management and sort of technical review. So we'd still be hiring a consultant team. The code amendment, so like the transitional housing, that has previously been 100% staff propped up. And so with a discussion of that there was a grant available to do that work, if we went for the grant, it would free up staff capacity and we can hire somebody to write those code amendments. That's why we went in that direction.
Okay, do we want to take another little nod around to now that we have a little clarification on how things would go in capacity and say, if you would want to move it forward, give me an idea. Scott, yes or no? No. I'm going to say no. It's a no in the majority.
No resolution for November. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'm going to close the work session at 6:59. Thank you to the Planning Commission for joining us.
Yeah, both of these are planning commissioners. You have her name. Yeah.
Now,
Want me to grab you anything to drink? Or anything?
either water or a diet.
Preference, like,
Whatever you see that says diet.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Taylor. That's okay. Thank you very much. All right, I will now call the city council meeting to order at 7:03 and ask Claudia to do a roll call, please.
Counselor Chenoweth,
Here.
Counselor Payne,
Present.
Counselor Geary,
Good evening.
Counselor Cunningham,
Here.
Counselor Tukolsky,
Present.
Council President Peralta,
Here.
and Mayor Morris.
Here. Now, if you're able to stand, please stand for the pledge. I will lead you in that. Okay. Oh, gosh. We do have one change to tonight's agenda. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that staff removed item 6C, which is the Oregon Wine Services and Storage LLC DBA wine shipping for distillery from the consent agenda. Now we're going to move on to public comments. Any interested audience member is invited to provide comments, and any comment provided that requires some type of follow-up will be assigned to a staff member. Anyone may speak on any topic other than a matter in litigation, a land use decision that is or will be in front of the city council, or a matter scheduled for a public hearing at some future date. Comments will be limited to 4 minutes per person for a total of 32 minutes. If you are on Zoom and wish to speak, please use the raise your hand feature or chat feature and send a chat to the city recorder team. Once it's your turn, we will announce your name and unmute your mic. Please announce your name and the city you live in for the record. We will start with those who have pre-registered. Claudia, do we have anybody pre-registered?
Yes, first we'll start with Bonnie Zachary.
Okay. Welcome.
Hi. I have some packets to pass out.
Sure. Thank you. You can state your name and the city you live in, and we'll get started.
Yeah, hi, I am Eli Zachary, and I'm representing my mom, Bonnie Zachary. We both live here in McMinnville.
Okay.
So we are here to make an appeal that we are unable to afford new sidewalk renovations on our property or lining our property at this time. So due to the construction progress on our project on our home, we have been made aware that the city code requires compliance with updated sidewalk regulations. We respectfully request your attention to these important details in our plight for us to eventually, when we can afford it, conform to these new sidewalk regulations. So some key points in our case. On this project, our contractor abandoned the home construction job before it was completed. My mom has had to continue the job serving as her own contractor. Completing the unfinished work is taking all the extra funds that she had saved. There was a miscommunication regarding our obligations with redoing the sidewalk. The updated sidewalk regulations that we would have to meet is to have a grade of no greater than 2%. When we had city representatives come to consult with us, most of our sidewalk sections measured between 2.4 and 2.8%. It's less than 1% grade over the required regulation. We live on a corner lot, so we have a far above the average length of sidewalk on our frontage, so it will be a very expensive renovation. We are asking for flexibility at this time to reach compliance with these sidewalk requirements. So at the end of 2023, our contractor, Jorge Dominguez, met with us to tell us that he could not complete our contracted project. He claimed that there was a family hardship and he had to leave to Honduras immediately. We thought we had parted amicably. However, when we reached out to continue working with the companies that he had been using, they refused to continue working with us, and our former contractor would not respond to any of our calls or texts to explain the situation. We would later find out through a chance encounter with one of his employees that he had not, in fact, left Honduras. He was still continuing other jobs in the area. He had dropped us and made it exceedingly difficult for us to continue the jobs ourselves. To this day, he still refuses to send any of the documentation that he has that would make this job easier. For example, recently it was difficult to provide the city with a sewer scope footage that we had done because he would not send it to us. Finding new carpenters, electricians, painters, and tilers has all increased the cost of this project as we do it ourselves, as well as requiring a significant amount of my mother's time and energy. Regarding the sidewalk specifically, the code requiring renovations was not communicated to us by our former contractor until near the end of his time working for us. He should have been aware of the code before we ever even broke ground, and it would have been in the original budget in our contract. After he left and we became the contractor, my mom reached out to the city planning department for more information about how our building permits worked, as she needed to obtain a new one. She followed the information that she was given as well as she could, but the information that she had was incorrect. It was her understanding at that time that the sidewalks could wait until she was able to afford it, even if the building permit expired. She wouldn't incur any fees or penalties, and only if it came time that she sold her home would she need to obtain a new permit and complete the sidewalk renovation. It was over a year later that we found a warning notice from the city taped to the front door back in June. She immediately called to find out what the issue was, and that's when she understood that the information she had was incorrect. This project has been a huge ordeal for her. We started it out thinking that we had the best contractor we could find, someone who'd be on top of everything and make it easy, but we ended up being abandoned and left to finish it ourselves. She is retired, 66 years old, single woman who's living on Social Security. And so basically, we're just asking for some flexibility because at this time we can't afford, if you look, there's an included quote for $11,000 for what this.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the city manager if he can direct it to a staff member to reach out to you and have a discussion about it.
Okay.
And see where we're at, okay?
Okay.
Because we can't do anything right at the moment, so I'm going to ask him to look into it for you. All right? So somebody will get back to you.
That's the best we could afford. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you for being here. Claudia, do we have anyone else signed up?
Yeah, next we have Doug Rux.
Welcome.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Doug Rux. I live in Sherwood, Oregon. Actually, I'm here, it's an agenda item, 7B, and I'm just here to be able to answer questions for you if you have questions on that item.
So at this point, we don't ask questions during this, but we
not now.
appreciate you being here.
But when you get to that agenda item, if you have questions, I'm.
Okay, 7B. Thank you.
That's everyone that signed up.
Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? Nope. Okay. Thank you. So now we are going to move into a public hearing. So we will now begin the public hearing process of the agenda for the public hearings being heard this evening. Please state your first and last name and city you reside in for the record. Each person testifying will be allotted 3 minutes for their testimony. Public hearing to consider resolution number 2025-54, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2025-26 and making appropriation transfers. Does any counselor need to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or recuse themselves regarding this topic? Okay. I'd now like to call on Finance Director Katie Henry to give a presentation on the topic.
Thank you, Mayor. This public hearing is actually just on one of the funds that is being considered. The public hearings required for supplemental budgets have to do with funds where more than 10% of the current appropriated amount is being requested. This is only the case for the wastewater capital fund. And this has to do with timing of capital projects for wastewater. There were several large projects that we didn't know if they would be completed in May, June, or July, August, September. You know, the timing we didn't know at the time. And so this request is simply to move the budget from one year to the other. The funds are still remaining in the beginning fund balance. So we're just adding it to the beginning fund balance and then continuing those projects that were already budgeted in fiscal year 25 and moving those to fiscal year 26. This budget hearing is required by law, by Oregon budget law, and we need to find out from the public anytime we are going to increase by more than 10%. So that is what we are here for right now.
Okay. Does any counselor have any questions for Director Henry? So we'll now start the public testimony. Is anybody signed up for testimony, Claudia?
No one signed up.
Does anybody in the room want to testify? Okay. Do we have anybody on the phone or anybody on Zoom? No. Okay. Well, then this is going to go quick. Any additional questions before I close the hearing? No. That concludes our public testimony for this evening. Does the staff have anything else that they would like to add to the record at this time? Or does any city council have any additional questions for staff before it's officially closed?
Yes, please.
Councilor Chenoweth.
I just want to get an idea from interim city manager what your understanding is of the funds listed under ARPA. Do we have a time limit to expend those funds? what is the current thinking on what has to be done, if anything, to appropriate those funds?
I'll defer to our finance director, Katie, on the legalities of the ARPA funds. I own brief understanding of it, but I'll let her speak to specifics.
So those funds, we will cover this in more detail when we get to the resolution section. This is just the public hearing section. But to answer that question, those funds have now become unrestricted and they are part of our funds. We identify them as the funds formerly known as ARPA, but there are no restrictions on those.
And that was done through a resolution process by council about 2 years ago, I believe, or a year and a half ago.
Any additional comments? Okay, I will now close the public hearing. It's 7:15. Thank you, Katie. All right, now we'll move on to presentations. Presentations from James Lofton, City Engineer, in regards to Old Sheridan Road and Cypress, and a safety review presentation.
Good evening.
Jeff, it's still cold in here. What's that? It's still cold in this room.
Working on it. We
Freezing up here.
we upped the amounts by 2 degrees on the upper and lower end, and we can up them again. We have control now, so I'll tell Gianni.
That'd be great. Okay, you guys are on.
Good evening. Jeff is going to share his screen here. Alrighty, so we're here tonight in response to the safety evaluation the city had done. We hired we have an on-call contract with David Evans and Associates for engineering support. We hired them to look at this intersection to evaluate its safety, and that's what we're here to present on tonight. And this is in response to the fatal car accident that happened earlier in the year. Now, as we looked at it, they did identify there is an upward crash trend. There is regular pedestrian use in the early morning, and there are not marked crosswalks or protected crossing devices. And the other item that's important here is the objective was to implement, with part of this analysis, was to look at it from a couple perspectives. We wanted to implement a phased set of improvements, if warranted, to make sure we balanced short-term needs with long-term investments, also looking at development and how that may relate. So they did identify, as they essentially they gather the data that's available to them from ODOT, and they see that there were 7 crashes recorded between 2014 and 23. The majority of them happened after dark. Common contributing factor that they found was folks going too fast. Also failure to stop at the stop sign. So folks going northbound through the county section of Old Sheridan, turning right onto the city's right-of-way, kind of just blowing through that stop sign. There was 2 crashes that were intersection related at the stop sign, and so it was clear correlation to an issue potentially with that stop sign. The curved segment of Cypress Lane at that intersection is, it's a large radius, and it does accommodate quicker traffic, essentially. You could reduce that curb alignment, and people would be forced to slow down to get around it. And so those were some of the things they identified as they looked at the crash behaviors. In the context of looking at the safety, they also collected pedestrian and traffic data out there, not just reviewing the information that's available to us in crash data, but they picked up counts for pedestrian and vehicles. They found that there is a pedestrian activity peak in the early morning and the evening. Didn't see a lot of bicycle volumes. They're relatively modest. The speed did show that folks, the 85th is percentile is around 32, so they are over the posted speed limit of 25. We did have some that exceeded even 40, but we weren't seeing the 85th percentile, we weren't seeing a massive increase over the posted speed limit. They did also find that there's about less than 4% of the traffic were heavy vehicles, not a lot of semi-trucks going through there. And then within the peak periods, and then of course 12% on some of the approaches. So again, as we're looking at potential curb radii in future designs, that information is important with looking at that design. And just just to make sure folks are aware, that intersection is only stop controlled on the northbound leg, or the southern leg. The east to west sections of that intersection are not stop controlled. The county's portion of that is a 40 mile an hour. As they get to the city, that changes to 25. This exhibit here, we had DA pull together for us. After they looked at all this data, they kind of laid it out in short term, medium term, and long term. Short term, the anticipation was that those could be done with existing city resources and potentially existing budget for maintenance or upkeep of our infrastructure. We wanted to know what can we do right now to potentially increase the safety of this intersection. It should be noted, they didn't necessarily find anything that was alarming, but as they analyzed this, it was, yeah, there are some things we could do to help improve safety. The medium term, we looked at that as, something we can be doing within the next 5 years. It'll take some investment in engineering and design to pull together a stamped design that we can then manage a contract to go and construct. And then long term, looking out in the future, maybe as the urban growth boundary lands are developed, what are we doing then with this intersection to make sure we're thinking long-term strategy? And so some of these short-term things that we identified right off the bat, the stop sign, it needed to be refreshed. And so city staff have already gone and replaced that stop sign. They also recommended potentially some striping, which would be a continental crosswalk across both the east leg and the south leg, just to provide very clear direction to pedestrians that that's where you can cross. Also looked at potentially, there were some trees that are pretty full grown, and there might be some opportunities for management of that foliage out in the right of way. Potentially some of it on the private property. We would have to coordinate with property owners to manage that. But those are relatively easy things we could do now, and we're already started on. Medium term, we're looking at the alignment of that curb. It doesn't have to be as large as it is. It doesn't have to accommodate people going 30 miles an hour around that corner. And so we're looking at reducing that curb radius to help force folks to slow down. We're also coordinating with the county on what happens in their right-of-way, of course, when we're designing that, and making sure we're working closely with our partners. Also, potentially is a good opportunity to put in a rapid flashing beacon at this location. A lot of tree coverage, so a solar option wouldn't work very well. Potentially a solar option we looked at could be a traffic crossing ahead sign, and that's what you kind of see on the right side of the exhibit there. But a hardwired option, that'll take some time to coordinate and to facilitate. That solar option for traffic ahead, that might, if we can get something to work there, that could be potentially a short-term item we could squeeze in now. But we do believe that we would want some sort of better identification at the intersection in a more of a medium or longer-term scenario. And we really only have one more medium turn. Is a unique improvement you don't see very often, but a diagonal overhead line with flashing yellow and flashing red lights on it. I can think of one other spot in Oregon, in Dallas, where I grew up seeing that one. And this is, you don't see them very often, but they are helpful to attract attention to, hey, there is a stop here, and hey, we need to make sure we're slowing down and looking at the intersection. Now, it's not necessarily recommended that you do that and a rapid flashing beacon. So again, as we're engineering or designing that, we would have to make sure whatever we put there doesn't detract from the other improvement. But there's a couple options there that we could do. The long-term improvement ultimately for this intersection would be a signalized or a roundabout intersection. The amount of traffic that's going to be coming from the future traffic loads is such that we anticipate it'll be warranted. We anticipate that we'll look more closely at that with the TSP that's coming in the future. But similar to some of the roundabouts you see on Hill Road, we'd expect maybe this to be a similar type intersection improvement. Are there any questions on any of those particular improvements in there?
I just wanted to clarify. So you've already changed out the stop sign, and you're
Yes,
going to do the painted crosswalks now, right?
Yeah, we're working to get that scheduled with our in-house staff to go out and get those striped at a time that makes sense for them. Also recognizing that the weather, we have to get the dryness to cooperate with us for a little bit.
Okay, great. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Geary?
The new stop sign one of the more high-vis, reflecty with the magic coat of paint on there? Or is it actually a flashing?
It's not a flashing. It's standard MUTCD signage. The other one, it appeared to us to be a little small. It didn't appear to quite meet standards, and so we're like, hey, just let's replace it, make sure it's a new one that's fully reflective and meets standards, and we can confirm. So,
The old was like a 20-inch or something like that. We replaced it with a standard 36, which is required.
Oh, okay. Super.
Councilor Chenoweth?
I don't really have a question. I really have more of a comment, and that is thank you for bringing this to us and keeping us in the loop given what happened. I know it's not always the procedure in these kinds of situations where we have a traffic problem. It may not necessarily come to us. You guys are going to work through this, but I really appreciate you taking the time and deference to bring it before us, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilor Peralta?
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you being here. I just had a couple of questions. The flashing light that's there that notifies people when they're going too fast.
Yeah, the speed feedback sign.
Right. Have you changed that sign so that there's now a single off-colored light?
I don't believe that is
Well, the reason I ask is I drove through there yesterday, and the light flashed on me, so I was going a little too fast. But when it did, there was a single light, and it almost looked like a camera. It was just a white light in the center of the sign, and I didn't know if that was intentionally placed there to look like a camera, but I mean, it caught my attention more than
we got you.
Now you're
No, it's not a camera.
No, I know it's not, but I was wondering if that was done intentionally, because it seemed like a really effective traffic calming tool.
Not wanting to admit that I've triggered this a few times myself, but I can tell you it's been there for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, often it flashes kind of brightly to really draw your eye.
Obviously, it didn't mean
Well, but
as much to you.
there's one, I mean, there's just one bulb in there that's a different color, and it makes it look like a camera, and I thought that if that was intentional, well done. The other question that I had was actually about the county road that leads to it on Old Sheridan. That's in the Southwest Area Plan. Is that going to become a city road?
Eventually it would. It would have to be improved to city standard first. And I forgot to mention the stop ahead sign. So we'd be working with the county right now to potentially install that. But in the future, as that becomes a city road, there's other improvements there that we would need.
So my question about that road is it going to get pulled into the TSP when we take the TSP on? Is that going to be part of our TSP, even though it's not currently in the city?
I would understand yes, because it's within the urban growth boundary.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Tukalski?
Yeah, thank you. Like Councilor Chenoweth said, I'm thankful that you continue to bring this to us. One thing I didn't see mentioned were like rumble strips, which are rather, I would presume, not expensive, but there's something I don't know.
Not expensive. They're quite loud in a tighter residential area, especially with larger vehicles. And so they're often something that you don't install in a more urbanized area because of the noise complaints that tend to come with them. So we're looking at other things first.
Okay.
We did consider it. It was looked at by the consultant and wasn't recommended to install them here.
Okay, I figured something I didn't know.
It is something that the county is considering, and we ask that the proximity of residential neighborhoods be considered as part of that. But it is their right of way. If they elected to do something like that, they could.
The only reason I ask is because flashing lights and signs don't stop those that wish to just do what they want anyway. So rumble strips kind of force you to slow down. That's why I asked. Thank you.
Counselor Geary?
I don't really travel much at night other than going home from council, it's usually in bed, and that's not on my morning run route. So how are the roads illuminated, just I see you talk about sort of the flashing beacons for signalizing, but just sort of overhead lighting in that area for pedestrians or just street visibility? I don't really have a good handle on where those are there.
I don't believe those.
Street lighting was a concern when they reviewed that. I believe there's existing street lights, but we can double check that.
Okay. I hear visibility in some of that report, and maybe we're addressing it by the ability to see the stop sign or see the crosswalks as headlight indicators, but I hear visibility, and I think just lighten the whole thing up too.
Yeah.
Where visibility was a concern was in kind of those early or dusk hours where you could be driving into the sun or shadows from trees. Those were discussed as potential concerns.
Okay.
I did not hear anything about actual intersection lighting.
Yeah, I would agree. It was the dusk, dawn hours, and then those large trees with very long shadows being a concern because the lighting difference. So your eyes are adjusted to the lighter, but not necessarily the darker.
Understood.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Yeah, I drive this particular stretch of road multiple times a day on average. So I'm very familiar, and yeah, it's the sunlight that's their biggest visibility issue. It happens to, I don't know who decided to put that orange orb where they put it as you're driving down that road, but that's where it is. Can you talk to me about when we go, what determines going from the short term to the medium term solution? How far out is that looking? Is that something that would be normal budget process, or is it extra funds needed to do it, et cetera?
It depends. If the medium-term improvement is relatively minor, sometimes we can include it in some of what we have as maintenance for streets. We always have some for ADA ramp improvements. The city does a lot of ADA ramps in connection with developments that are going on, and so that could potentially be utilized. I anticipate that some of the medium-term improvements will be such that it will require to be budgeted as part of the budget process, but some elements may be able to be incorporated earlier.
I was thinking more of the beacons for crossing.
Rapid flashing beacons that are solar are relatively affordable. It's scheduling the time to design it and implement it. Hardwired ones are more expensive. I would anticipate that would be part of the annual budget process, and you'd see a line item in there for that project.
And at this point, you're not thinking of doing that. You're thinking that's some number of years out?
So that would be within the next 3-5 years. We're going to try to get that on there.
Okay, thank you.
anything to add to that.
Any additional questions? Great, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay, now we're going to move on to reports from counselors on committees and board assignments. I'm going to start to my left with Counselor Tukolsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Let's see, the Airport Commission is meeting this coming Tuesday on the 21st, so I'd have nothing new to report on that one. I did meet with the YCOM Executive Board today. We have, there's a lot of OHA requests for dispatching, and the group is actually looking at a different fee structure, and I'm not going to comment on that because it's not completed yet. But it's going to allow them to do the things that they wish to do and haven't been able to do so far. The other thing that I wanted to report was the dispatch center. YCOM is actually going through.
Because I got to do the meeting stuff.
Counselor Payne? I think your mic is on.
Sorry.
Dispatch center is actually going through a bit of a process right now because we're trying to meet the standards of what's required for a dispatching time. And the dispatch time that's been proposed is 60 seconds, and that's from the time of the call to the time of dispatch. And what we're encountering right now is we have 60 seconds plus another 60 seconds to have the location of the call determined. And so we've asked Director Patty Sowers to push back on that requirement a bit so that we can continue to offer the medical information that's required so that you're not just sending an ambulance into an unknown situation. We'd like to provide the same level of service we provide today, so it was unanimous that we're asking that to be included, and so she's going to be asking for a bit of an amendment on that. So we'll see if we get that. And that's what I have right now.
Thank you. Counselor Chenoweth?
You'd think I'd remember to move the mic first. On last Wednesday, I got to meet one-on-one with our new airport manager, got to know a little bit more about him and his background. Thoroughly enjoyed that meeting. Followed that right up by getting to hear him at the MEVLC bring the airport master plan, where they're at in that process before us, which was, again, thoroughly enjoyable. I think that is coming before us. We've kind of had it once before, and I think we're going to have it soon again here. And then we went from there and did a field trip and walked up and down Alpine Avenue to get an understanding for the budget or the legislative request for money for the completion of the Alpine project. I enjoyed going to the air show. It was a wonderful show, and I enjoyed going to the dinner where we got to meet the pilots, and that's my report.
Counselor Gary?
Thank you. In between committee meetings, visit McMinnville's tomorrow, and MURAC will be after that. But on the subject of the bond that we have on, I've been out in the community doing multiple speaking engagements to provide information to folks. The town hall we had, the Kiwanis, the AM Rotary, and Sir Optimus are some of the groups I've been presenting information to. That's my report.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to joining the Day of Service.
Yes, this Saturday. That's on my reports. I'll just start with that. So this Saturday is McMinnville and Visit McMinnville are teaming up for a day of service. So you can come be part of that at the library, well, in the park by the library, 9 to 12. We'll meet. All the supplies will be there. There'll be bagels and coffee. We'll divide up, and probably mostly what we're going to do this year is pick up trash around the greater McMinnville downtown area, the city park, the lower city park, some areas like behind Dollar Tree. So come be part of it and join us and give back to this lovely community. And the other items that I have on here that have happened between our last meeting and now is I met with our sheriff, Sam Elliott. We reviewed some of the statistics from the Yamhill County drug team and noted that meth, fentanyl, and now carfentanil is the things that they're addressing and seeing and taking care of. So we appreciate all their efforts on that. I spoke to the Republican Women's. I was invited to that. Also attended the Oregon International Air Show, which was great, and I appreciated the opportunity to go to the meeting as well to meet the pilots. I was glad we could also attend the auction that night. So Mike and I attended the Kiwanis auction, used to be called Bids for Kids auction. And one thing about Kiwanis that I think is pretty cool is this year they've handed out 800 pairs of shoes to local kids, which is amazing. Also attended the Chamber annual awards dinner, volunteered at the Scottish Festival, met with Jeffrey Clayton, who is going to be on our agenda tonight to join our Affordable Housing Committee, and we talked about shelters and the history of that. Met with Kit Johnston, County Commissioner, my monthly meeting with him. Attended a Out of the Dark vigil for the first annual Oregon Youth Suicide Awareness Day, which is House Bill 3643, passed by Minority Leader Lucetta Elmer in the long session. I appreciate everybody that came to that. I was able to be a guest cook at Young Life House that same day for over 200 youth that go to McMinnville High School. I attended the memorial and highway dedication for fallen Deputy Paul Baker. Deputy Baker was killed in a head-on collision while on duty in 1982. The marker will be out by the bayou, the preserve where the accident happened. It's important to note that he is the only deputy that was killed while on duty in 180 years of the agency. Saturday was also with Courage Pink Ribbon event, which is an organization that supports families affected by breast cancer in Yamhill County. And also Mike and I had the opportunity to cook, actually serve scrambled eggs and ham at the Fire District's pancake breakfast. And I already told you about Saturday, so I started instead of ended with that. Council Peralta.
Thank you, Mayor. Planning Commission met earlier this evening, and Council of Governments did not meet since our last meeting.
Councilor Cunningham?
Yeah, so I didn't have any of my traditional committees meet, but I got to go to the League of Oregon Cities Conference, the annual conference, also recognizing 100 years of the League of Oregon Cities. It was a great 3-day conference filled with lots of informational items, and the interesting thing to me is that the overall thread, maybe a couple of different threads throughout, was that some of the challenges that our city is facing are very similar to almost every other city out there. And one of the things that I found quite interesting, because I always think of us as being a small town, we are in the large city collection, which would be shocking to most, but was probably a little bit more shocking to me, was to learn that 50% of Oregon's towns are actually a population of 2,000 or less. So it does make us feel pretty big when a majority of everyone else is about 2,000 or less. So other than that, one of the takeaways that I really took was that I think many of the things that we are doing within the staff to make our community a better place and taking advantage of many of the opportunities that the state has are things that we are already undertaking, and some of that's through the affordable housing and the land use efficiencies. That is stuff that we were getting taught there. And then finally, I would say that the interesting thing for me was that in every single breakout session, there was an offering, whether it was the legacy of leadership, but was referring to civility as one of the things that we need to focus on as a whole community. And it was great to hear that, and great to hear some of the ideas that folks had. So,
Great, thank you. And now I'm going to jump to Councilor Payne.
Sorry about my unmute earlier. DIAC was the only committee that I've had meet recently, and thank City Manager Garvin to show up and provide some insight on the goal planning session. Again, that was very productive. And we had discussion of grants, federal awarded grants that have requirements to not support DEIA. And so I think that's a concern, a valid concern, but the council will, of course, talk more about that in a work session. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance Director Katie Henry.
Thank you. So finance and court have been pretty much dedicated to software lately. So we are hoping to be able to bring you a contract for the court software at the November 12th meeting. So we have one more meeting with Tyler Technologies to kind of fine tune that, but that's the direction we're moving in. So it looks like November 12th for that to move forward. And then on the budget side, we have Crystal is becoming our subject matter expert on the Cuesta Cayuna budget book. So she has been working on developing what the new budget book will look like. And hopefully by the end of December, beginning of January, we'll have some mock budget books to kind of work through with you, or at least Adam will have to go through with council leadership to kind of see where we're headed with that, because it's a whole different experience to have it online and be an interactive budget book. So we're still developing that out, but we're making huge strides with that. There has been a slowdown, not slowdown, it's the same issue as always. We still don't have the integration for the actuals. They're still working on getting that for us, but I've been working on a manual way to get those in. So it has been updated through October 8th, the data. And so I'm going to just create a procedure so that we can update it probably weekly moving forward, and just start doing that because we're tired of waiting on them to say that they're going to get the integration going. So those are really the main points going on in finance and court right now.
Great, thank you. Interim City Manager Adam Garvin.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a busy couple weeks. I'll start off with an update from our communications department, Noel. Initial communications about the proposed ballot measure began last week. There's a 49% open rate on the city email. Typically, we see around a 40% open rate. So there's definitely higher interest in that. In addition, the social media post concerning the measure is the top performing post year to date, with a little over 18,000 views and 338 interactions. Outside of the social media, the informational brochure got printed and is put in our facilities. That's a open folding brochure, 4-pager, and then we have a 1-pager that is with Public Works staff and some other staff. So as citizens reach out, it's important for city staff to remain neutral in any communications. And so these match our mailer that went out and also the communications that's on our website around the bond measure. And then a reminder that the Southwest Area Plan Design Survey is live through the end of the month. So please take some time to review that and share it with your networks to try and boost the engagement on that. Our top performing post year to date by more than double was the press release around the Innovation Campus / McMinnville Landing. It had over 50,000 views. The next closest one was the post of my hiring at 25,000, and then we have a few in the 20,000 realm. So definitely a lot of interest in that McMinnville Landing. Bond information has also been shared with McMinnville Community Media and will appear via QR code for citizens to engage with during playback. So they're various things. In addition, if they're streaming tonight, they should be able to see that pop up. So be able to get that out. As far as from the city manager office, I continue to meet with community partners and get up to speed around their challenges and what they're facing around the community. Met with Linfield, served some eggs at the pancake feed and engaged with a lot of citizens around that and answered some city questions for a couple hours there. I attended a town hall that the CPR PAC put on to answer city-specific questions. I didn't engage in any of their informational campaign, but there are some questions that came up around our transportation bond, our stormwater needs, and things like that. So address those. And that was a well-attended meeting. I think there was about 30 or 40 in the crowd. And that'll conclude my report for tonight. Thank you.
Acting Attorney Tyler Millette.
Adam and Claudia keep me very busy, but they also keep me organized. Yeah, the team has been great in making sure I'm able to help, and I enjoy the opportunity to be of service.
Great. We appreciate you filling in. All right. Director Richards, do you have anything you'd like to add tonight?
Yes, thank you. A couple things I mentioned earlier today that during our joint work session of the Planning Commission and the City Council that we received notice a week or so ago that we had received 2 grant awards from the state to do some of the work in the planning department. One was we submitted, interesting enough, the grant awards didn't say how much they were. They said they would get back to us on that. Never seen that before, but I'm going to assume full value. So we submitted an application to do our housing production strategy work, the work that's in there for the next 2 years. That application was for $70,000. And then we also submitted an application to do a development code audit of our housing work as well, and that application was for $185,000. That is intended to work with legal counsel, contracted legal counsel, to help our team internally understand all the changes that have happened in the state regulatory framework, so statutes and administrative rules relative to housing and development over the last 5 to 10 years. There's a lot of them. They're very complicated, and we need to bring our code up to date. And we've gotten that direction from what is now called HAPO, which is the Housing Accountability Production Office, which is also the funding mechanism for those 2 grants. So I suspect we should do fairly well in a full recovery of those. I also wanted to let you know another state legislative effort recently was the Oregon Building Codes Division has been working on different plan sets that meet the state building codes. All cities work under the same state building code. That's to create conformity across the state. And at the state level, they've been talking about, in terms of efficiencies, developing plan sets that meet those codes so people can just use those plan sets and come into any community and build that. So they've been working recently on sort of accessory structure, so decks, garages, and other accessory structures. Stuart was sharing with me one that came through today or recently, which was a raised deck. And so we'll be working on how to bring those, how to be able to respond to those in-house. But just to let you know, the state also passed legislation where they will also be doing housing plan sets at the state level to meet the housing codes, and those will need to be automatically permitted when they come into the city of McMinnville. So we had testified against that because we felt that there should be local values in terms of design, and also what if we're trying to protect natural features or there's slopes that we're concerned about and things of that nature. Those haven't been in development yet. They're starting that work now. We'll get involved with that. They're setting up a rulemaking committee and voice our concerns as we go through to make sure that it still has an allowance for some local review if appropriate. But right now, those would come in and just automatically be able to be built on an existing lot. We still inspect them, though, interestingly. And then lastly, I wanted to let you know that in the planning world, one of your goals for this next year is the Southwest Area Plan, so I wanted to bring you up to date on that. We currently have our project advisory committees. They just did a community design workshop. Our project advisory committee is going to meet on October 29th and review the results of that and some other data that the consultant team has been putting together. And then we have another community workshop planned for January 24th, 2026 as well for that effort. So we will continue to engage with the community. I think for that workshop, we're going to send out a citywide mailer to let everyone know about it and have the opportunity to participate.
Great, thank you, Heather. Chief Wood?
I'm going to come up to the front this evening because I think if you're going to be introduced to somebody, you should at least be able to see them. This is Captain Dan O'Loughlin. Dan filled the position that was created when Captain Tim Simons retired at the first of the month. Captain O'Loughlin comes to us from Sherwood and Jervis via Hillsborough. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about himself, but very glad to have Captain O'Loughlin with us. Before I let him introduce himself, we also had another new police officer start yesterday. His name is Grant Sheely. Grant we were fortunate to get him into the police academy starting on Monday, and so he'll be with us 1 week, go to the police academy, and we'll get him back in February of next year. Why don't you introduce yourself to the council?
This is Mike on.
I believe so. Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me here in your city. It's great to be here. I've got about a week under my belt and learning quickly in regards to the city. Excited to be with the officers and with the support staff, and also to get to know the community. My career spans about 33 years in law enforcement, and it's always exciting to take on a new adventure, and I'm excited for this adventure to be here and support you and support your city. So thanks for having me, and glad to be here. So thank you.
Welcome.
Captain O'Loughlin's going to be taking over responsibilities for our patrol division, and Captain Fessler will be taking over the investigations operation that Captain Simons was previously in charge of.
And I just want to say thanks to your interim city manager for also, we have a swearing in, and that happened on my first day, and for the special people, sir, that were there for me, for my family. They appreciate having yourself there, and that's a special day, even though I've done that before. It's a special day for my special people to have people from the city that are there and spending time out of your busy day to be there. So thank you, sir.
Great, thank you, and also to Fessler in the back of the room. All right, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about you guys. You didn't really have anything you wanted to share, did you? Okay, sorry. Jeff Hunsaker.
Yeah, no problem. So in engineering, we had our new utility program manager start a couple weeks ago. He has already got the RFP put together for our Gateway Storm and Sewer project that's going to be in support of development in the Alpine area. So that was a new position in this year's budget. Took us a while to get it filled, but already paying dividends and getting work out the door, which is great.
Good.
For the Airport Commission is going to have a work session next week to go over rent and lease policies at the airport. Our new airport manager, John Pascal, is going to speak with them on that, answer some questions with the hope that they will have something to recommend for approval at their meeting in November, and we would bring something to the council by the end of the year. In operations, excuse me, if you hadn't noticed, it's autumn out there, so leaf season pickup starts on next week on the 20th. If you go to the city's website, scroll down, you can find one of the big links in the news stories there about the annual leaf program. It'll give you a GIS map to show the different areas that we zone and what days we're going to be in what areas for that leaf pickup. Our park maintenance team is also going to be doing some landscaping at City Park. We are currently working on figuring out a schedule with our landscape contractor to do brush clearing to get a big bulk of that work done. And then throughout the rest of the winter, we'll be doing some tree work, some tree limbing and things like that with our in-house staff. And then finally, at wastewater, we're looking at the hours for our RV dump site again. Right now, we leave it open at night, but we also have a camera out there, and some people come in and dump some mysterious things in that RV dump site. And if there's nobody out there to check on them, it just goes straight into the plant, and the chemistry out there can be finicky under certain circumstances. And so if we have bad actors, we might lose privileges to have that open at night. So we're looking at that, and I'll report out with the council if we change anything with the hours there. But we can't let the actions of a few affect the service that we're giving the rest of the community. So we got to do what we can to protect that asset out there.
HR Director Vicki Hedges.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry that I have a report tonight, y'all. So this evening, I'm actually excited to share that the city has received an award from our insurance provider, CIS. On October 4th, I actually got to join Councilor Cunningham for the annual League of Oregon Cities business meeting. And during that meeting, CIS presented their annual safety awards. The awards here are provided annually to 3 cities, with an award from a small city, which is less than 50 employees, a medium city, which is between 50 and 150 employees, and then a large city, which is more than 150 employees. This year, McMinnville was the recipient of the safety award for a large city in Oregon. So now, what did we do to earn this award? Here's what CIS had to say when they provided their award. McMinnville improved their best practices score by 13%. Their biggest strides were in fleet safety. In the past 5 years, they've adopted a comprehensive fleet safety policy, defined what an acceptable driving record looks like, and implemented department-specific training plans. The results? Only 25 auto-related claims in 5 years. Auto liability claim costs were $53,000 lower, and auto damage claims more than $100,000 lower than comparable cities. So these achievements that CIS mentioned were a result of a lot of work that we've been doing in HR, including updating our handbook that was more than 21 years old, implementing the annual required trainings that I've talked about so many times at council meetings, and then of course through the great work of our safety committee, which I just want to recognize tonight. Our current members include Patty Buffett, Kirsten Dennis, Amy Miles, Marcy Peters, Kristen Reed, Josh Russer, and Rob Rikers. So thanks to all of them for their hard work as well.
Great job. Thank you. Good report.
All right, thanks, Mayor and Council. Today, October 14th, is the last day of support for Windows 10, so it's the end of the road for that one if anybody's still running it. The IS team has been working on updating to Windows 11 for the last 12 months. I think out of 300 computers, we have about 3 left that are have some obscure piece of software that runs something. So we just kind of take those off the network and work to replace those as best we can, and we look forward to being back here in 2030 when I'm telling you about going to Windows 12 from Windows 11. So, and beyond that, we've been doing a lot of work to continue to link up our technology with our partners over at YCOM and Yamhill County as that PD record software project moves along and is on track for a springtime launch. That's all.
Thank you, Scott. Claudia Cisneros, City Recorder.
So aside from keeping Tyler busy, I've been working on minutes, and unfortunately, I do have a couple minor Scrivener errors on some of the draft minutes. In front of you, I did print copies of them to note which of those minor errors are on the August 26th, September 9th, and then September 23rd minutes. Unless there's other changes on the draft minutes, you can approve as amended on the consent agenda. Additionally, as we already mentioned, the first meeting in November, or I guess the first city council meeting in November, falls on Veterans Day, so that day, that meeting is canceled, and we've scheduled a special called work session and city council meeting for the following day, so November 12th. And then we'll have our November 19th regular city council or work session, and then canceling the November 25th city council meeting. It is the week of Thanksgiving, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Claudia. Did you have something you wanted to add, Adam?
I didn't want to steal her thunder in my report, but Claudia was installed as a Oregon Association of Municipal Recorders Vice President at the September 25th meeting, so congratulations.
Claudia's shy and does not like to be recognized, but thank you for doing that, Adam. I appreciate it. Okay, now we're going to move to the consent agenda. Does any counselor need something removed from the consent agenda? Counselor Cunningham?
Yeah, I need consent agenda A removed. I am not involved with that actual winery, but I'm involved in a business that is actually the leaseholder of that address.
Okay. Anything else need to be removed from the consent agenda? Okay, so we'll see that one separately. Let's go with the balance of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the other items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion from Counselor Geary and a second from Counselor Payne. Any further discussion? And I just want to note that that is with the amended minutes. Okay. Claudia?
Counselor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Aye.
And Council President Peralta.
Yes.
The consent agenda passes unanimously by a vote of 6-0 as amended.
Perfect. And before we move to A, I just want to say that part of the consent agenda was some committee members. And I know that Jeffrey Clayton is in the audience, and he is on the Affordable Housing Committee. And Lisa Allen, I don't see Lisa here. She's on the Affordable Housing Committee and also on Historic Landmarks. So thank you for joining the committee. Appreciate that. Now we're going to visit A, 7A, consider the request for DiZordo Wines and Vineyard, LLC, liquor license located at 475 Northeast 17th Street. Do I have a motion to accept this off the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion from Counselor Payne, a second from Counselor Geary. Do I have any discussion?
Was somebody wanting to recuse?
Yeah, I will recuse myself.
I'm sorry, I thought you already kind of did that. So we'll make it more official. He recused himself. Any further discussion? Okay. Claudia?
Counselor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Aye.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
The OLCC for DiSordo passes unanimously by a vote of 5-0.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, now we are going to move to Resolution 8. 8A, consider resolution number 2025-54, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2025-26 and making appropriation transfers. I'd like to call on Katie Henry, Finance Director, to present.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to get my screen shared here. Drum roll, please. And I'm just,
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead.
Okay. I'm just doing this in presentation form. What I have in here, this is not in your packet. It's the same information that is in the staff report. It's just this makes it so that the community and the citizens can follow along. These are the same tables that are in your staff report. I just find that it makes it easier for me when I'm following along if it's on the screen instead of just in the packet. So, first of all, why are we doing a supplemental budget so early in the fiscal year? a lot of times people ask me, well, if you just did a budget, we just passed a budget, why do we need a supplemental budget? If you did all this work to get a budget done, why are you coming back to us to ask for a change? The first is humans make the budget. So as soon as you adopt the budget, there is something in it that likely will need to be changed because humans are inherently fallible. I believe there's one small human error in this. The other piece is that it takes 6 months to put together a budget, and you have to stop the clock. So you have to stop your estimates around the March timeframe. And so that leaves a whole 3 months of time in which you have to guess as to what you're going to be able to get done. And a lot of times the really large projects, you don't know if you'll be able to finish them in June or in July or things like that. And so there's this timing with your fiscal years that you just don't know what's going to fall in each year. And so because of that, you have your beginning fund balance that is obviously an estimate, and then you have your expenses that you don't want to budget in both years because those would inflate and make your projections very off. And so my preference as a finance director is to always do a first quarter budget amendment once you've closed the books and the auditors have your numbers, then to bring back to you, okay, where did we actually end up and what are we looking at now that we have the books pretty much closed for last year? So that's why we're here, why we're looking at what we're looking at today. So first I wanted to show you some draft beginning balances. This is almost all the funds, it's not all of them, but these are the ones that we're looking at here today. And you can see that those unaudited beginning balances, and I say unaudited because the numbers will not exactly match the financial reports when the auditors get done with them. But you can see our general fund balance is significantly higher than was originally budgeted by almost $2 million. And then the ARPA funds themselves, which I've split out from the other general fund balances, are also significantly higher. Those ARPA funds that are higher than was budgeted have to do with projects that were not completed, and so they need to be rolled over so that we can finish those projects. And this is really just an informational slide for you, just so that you have some reference, because we're not using all of these balances, so they don't all show in the supplemental budget. But I wanted you to at least be able to see where I'm coming from with these numbers and why I'm confident that we have these amounts, even though we don't have the finalized beginning balances numbers. Then I've tried to split this apart into categories to make it a little easier to understand what these supplemental budget amounts are that we're requesting. The first is carryover of interfund loan projects. There was a resolution in 2024 that authorized a whole series, is my understanding, I wasn't here, but a whole series of interfund loans from wastewater to general fund for some capital projects. So those projects have been put in the budget since then. These are all the projects that are left that haven't been completed. So this is just saying there's a resolution there that says that we'll do an interfund loan when these projects are completed. They haven't been completed, so in order to fulfill that resolution, we need to roll the budget forward in order to complete them. I want to point out that should you decide that you don't want to move forward with this or would like to not carry forward with these projects, you can choose to pull out of the supplemental budget today bits and pieces of it. So should you decide not to move forward with these, you can amend the supplemental budget as such. So just so you know,
okay.
It's not an all or nothing thing. Then we have the ARPA projects. these are the projects that were included in the 25 budget that were not completed. And so this is just rolling over the budget. No change to the total project budgets, no change to anything that we discussed last year or the amounts that you have budgeted for each of the projects. It's purely a timing thing from one fiscal year to the other. Then we have what I'm calling purchase orders and other unfinished projects. So we have contracts, we have projects that are underway, and we have purchase orders, and at the end of the year, we have to close out the purchase orders and then open them again, roll them over into the new year. So this 170,000 or so is those contracts that weren't closed out at the end of the year.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely.
So on 2, under general fund, the ADA transition plan, the 25,000, what's the 25,000 represent?
Yeah. If it's working, I think the batteries, oh, they're passing that one.
I mean, is that spent or there or?
So, Mayor, that is similar to all the other projects you see on there, which was when we forecasted what we would spend in fiscal year 25 versus what we needed in fiscal year 26. We're doing that forecast in January, February, and working through like when is the RFP going to hit the streets? When are we going to select a contractor? When are we going to start the work? So we thought we would start $25,000 worth of work on that project. At that time, it got delayed and we didn't start it until fiscal year 26. So we had populated the budget in fiscal year 25 in case we were starting work. We didn't, and so that's transferring over to fiscal year 26. That's the same with those other projects you see on there.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I put these other general fund ones in a different category because they aren't rolling over things. These are 2 other types of adjustments. So for police, there was a safety concern identified with some firearms where they had to replace a bunch of them. Chief is here if we need to get more information. But and so they had to expend about $24,000 for an unexpected replacement that they had no choice but to do in order to have working firearms after this safety concern was identified. So this is to do that. And for the administration, this is a very small supplemental amount of $2,905. So there are, and this is a misunderstanding on my part. When we were in the last meetings, we were taking things off of the budget in budget committee, and we removed the holiday lighting. And my understanding was in the general fund, we were removing all of the holiday lighting, and I guess it should have just been the Christmas tree. And there were a few dollars that were in there for buildings that are split across all the funds. And so it was removed from the general fund as well. And so we need to put back that $2,900 in order to round out the contract that is shared between all the different funds for, I think it's lights on the buildings. Yeah. And then,
Mayor, may I ask a question before we move on?
Yes, Councilor Tukalski.
Director Henry, I just want to, just for clarity, we're still lighting the Christmas tree, right?
my understanding is that that is going to be paid by someone outside of the city. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I've been working with our community partners, MDA, Visit McMinnville.
Okay.
MEDP in the chamber.
Okay.
They're picking that up and getting them what they need. So the tree will still be lit, and there will still be a Santa parade with the tree lighting at the end.
Thank you. It's a very important part of our community. Thanks.
This IS adjustment has to do with projects that our IT team was going to do in '25, and as you know, Scott, our IT director, had to cover as interim finance director for a fair part of fiscal year '25, and not all of the projects were able to be completed. So these are projects that had to be rolled over into FY '26. This is just the split between funds. That's why you have these tiny amounts in like the Affordable Housing Fund and the Airport Maintenance Fund, because they don't carry a large portion of the citywide activities. And then in the general fund, that portion is the piece that was to be funded with the interfund loan that we discussed in the first section, that 38,000.
I'm going to ask one more question since we're looking at these numbers, and it's probably going to be Jeff Hunsaker that I think is going to answer it. So the splash pad renovation has not been completed, correct? Was that supposed to be completed in September? Can you tell me what happened? Somebody asked me that just the other day.
Yes, yes, should have been completed by now. We've had some delays with our design consultant. Plans have been stuck in 90% design for a little while now. We are constantly pressuring there to get them wrapped up so that we can move forward with getting it replaced.
Katie, sorry to interrupt your presentation.
Oh, that's okay.
The numbers need to understand. Okay, keep going.
In wastewater, I believe it was last council meeting, we talked about finally getting the roof replacement on building 50. So that was scheduled originally in fiscal year '25. So that's the only thing that was rolled over in wastewater services, was the funding for that roof. And then in the capital fund, that's what we discussed for the public hearing, is those fairly large projects where we don't know the timing. So you have to split it across years, and then when you find out when it happens, then you roll or do a supplemental when you have to. So that's all that is. The top line of that, the interfund borrowing, that's just the money going out from the wastewater capital fund. So what is the fiscal impact of what we're requesting in this supplemental budget? It is fairly large for a supplemental budget, 3.3 million overall. Our general fund amount is 1.16 million. So general fund and wastewater capital fund are two large amounts of what is being requested in this supplemental budget. The others are relatively small. Are there any other questions for me?
Councilors? Councilor Peralta?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the presentation, Director Henry. Thank you very much. I just wanted to confirm what I think I heard is that with a couple of exceptions, all of these are essentially roll forwards because they were monies allocated in 2025 that weren't spent, so they rolled forward to 2026.
That's correct.
And then the two exceptions that I heard were the building lights for 2,800 and the police firearms for about 25 grand. Is there anything else that I missed there?
Those are the only two that were not included in the 25 budget and rolled over.
So anything that had a claim on dollars has already been accounted for except for those two?
That's correct.
Was there, and I didn't see it, I assume there's not, there were no additional receipts anticipated, just those two new claims, basically?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, so then I'll ask for a motion to consider Resolution 2025-54.
So moved.
Resolution adopting a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2025-26 and making appropriation transfers. I have a motion from Councilor Cunningham.
Second.
A second from Councilor Geary. Any additional questions or discussion? Claudia?
Councilor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Councilor Payne?
Aye.
Councilor Geary?
Aye.
Councilor Cunningham?
Aye.
Councilor Tukolsky?
Aye.
President Peralta?
Yes.
Resolution 2025-54 passes unanimously by a vote of 6-0.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Now we're going to move on to 8B, consider resolution number 2025-51, a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to sign an annexation agreement with Yamhill Soil and Water Conservation District, who is the property owner, and Mac Multi LLC, who's the buyer, for the future annexation of tax lot R4409CD00100. I'd like to call on Heather Richards, Community Development Director, to present.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to let you know the property owner and the applicant are both in the audience today as well. But this is an annexation agreement, which is the start of our annexation process to consider annexing in what is right now an island in our city in terms of a county zoned piece of property, and to annex that into the city for a multifamily development. So something serves two needs for us. One, we're trying to eliminate the county land islands that we have within the city limits, and then also it's promoting multifamily development, which is a needed housing development for the city. So the subject site to be annexed, just to let you know, it's about 3.17 acres. It's owned by Yamhill Soil and Water Conservation District. You'll recognize it. It's right next to Shegwin Park. We leased that property from the Soil District as well for the park. That was annexed into the city in 2008. And then it's also right across the street from Grand Haven Elementary School. This shows where it's located within the city itself, and anything that has a green box around it is what we call islands within the cities. That's the county zone land within the city limits, which we're striving to get to be annexed into the city and zoned for development. We've been working with Yamhill Soil and Water Conservation District, I think, for about 4 years, I'm going to say, on this property. To annex it into the city for development like multifamily development. They came and visited with us several years ago to see what their interest was leveraging this property as an asset. Our interest was getting it into the city. We had discussions about what be the best and highest use for this property, and had discussions there about high density residential development. And then they started working to find a relationship with a developer and get it under contract for that. It's proposed to be a 72-unit multifamily development, but like other annexation agreements that I'm bringing to you, we're not focused on the site plan at this point in time. We're really just focused on the process in terms of setting the stage for the land use review to occur and for the annexation to occur as an action of the City Council in the future. We set up this annexation agreement process in 2016 so that we could have that sort of contractual arrangement with property owners that said, if you want to annex into the city, this is the expectation of the city. And then it also gave property owners the certainty of what was going to be required of them to annex into the city as well. When we get an annexation application, we sit down as a team around the application. So we invite the fire district to participate, Mac Water and Light, our engineering team, public works team, parks team, and we review the application for anything that those partners in the city want to include in the annexation agreement to you as a recommendation of things that we may want to have dedicated for public right-of-way or public amenities that we want included as part of the project when we're reviewing it. Some applications come in with a site plan, and we're working through already in advance the public improvements that will be required of the site plan. That was part of this process. It makes the land use review that much easier for the applicant and the city when that starts. And you'll notice in the annexation agreement, because it's not in the city today, they can't go through the land use process quite yet, but once we sign the annexation agreement and say the direction is to go through the land use process, we will then start the land use process within the planning department, and it will come to you for a decision as to what the future zoning will be for that property at the same time that you're going to also be considering the annexation into the city. The purpose behind that is you want to annex property into the city that's ready to be developed. So you'll see land use requirements, public facility requirements in these annexation agreements. Particular to this one, there's discussion, and this will always be under Section 4 of an annexation agreement. We're starting to see more of these now. We're in discussion with 2 others who are thinking about annexing too. So Section 4 of that agreement is always going to have this sort of individualized requirements of the particular property and project. And in this one, you'll see some frontage improvements that our Public Works Department worked with the applicant on. We also have construction of a pedestrian mid-block crossing to accommodate sort of what we see is going to be the need for dedicated safe crossings for the elementary school into the park system through the multifamily development, if that's occurring there or around it. So we're asking for connectivity in that regard as well. So the agreement's in front of you. This will start our process of annexing this property into the city. It will be dependent upon the timing of the land use process to get a rezone for this property and a comp plan map amendment in terms of when it comes to you in the near future. Are there any questions?
Councilors, do we have any questions of Director Richards? Councilor Peralta?
No question, Director Richards. I just wanted to express my appreciation to the Soil and Water Conservation District for their work generally and for the board's collaborative spirit on this project. If we look at the map, this proposed housing project is between Grand Haven Elementary and Chegwin Park. It's an ideal location for that kind of development, and it adds a lot of value for our community. So I appreciate both sides of this deal for moving it forward. Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Councilor Gary?
Did I hear you say that this was a 4-year process to get to this point? Is that correct?
No, well, I would say it's been a 4-year conversation. We had conversation with the district about the property and the interest in annexing it in. It took some time for them to enter into an arrangement with the developer. In terms of the application and when it was submitted, in December.
Pre-app in December.
So pre-app means
This
that
is in
they met with
October.
city
Okay.
staff in December of last year before they submitted the application itself to share with us their intention and what they want to do and what the requirements would be for the application. Then we received the application, and then the internal partners that I described started looking at the application and having discussions with the applicant about the public improvement requirements. And that went back and forth a little bit. I would say the applicant team really wanted some certainty as to the public improvements required for their proposed site plan and development.
Okay, so pre-app in December, about 11 months to get to this point from there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, so can I have a motion to consider resolution number 2025-51, a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to sign an annexation agreement with the Yamhill Soil and... Can I finish?
Yep, sorry.
Yamhill Soil and Water Conservation District and MAC Multi LLC for the future annexation of tax lot R4409 CD 00100. I'm going to accept a motion from Councilor Payne.
Second.
A second from Councilor Chenoweth. Any additional comments or questions? Claudia?
Counselor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Aye.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
Resolution 2025-51 passes unanimously by a vote of 6-0.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to, consider resolution number 2025-57, a resolution approving an addendum to the MacTown 2032 strategic plan. I'd like to call on Vicki Hedges, Human Resources Director, to present.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, as you'll recall, during our goal setting this year, the MacTown 2032 strategic plan we reviewed the action items from the MacTown 2032 strategic plan, That plan was originally adopted in January of 2019. Since that time, the city has been doing a lot of work to complete the action items, and council has updated their guidance several times since then. This year, there were some goals added, some goals revised, some goals postponed, some goals removed. There were also some action items added in during goal setting of 2024. So this addendum is intended to track those changes in a more formal manner so that the community can see them, so that internal stakeholders can see them, and we can track our progress along the way.
Thank you, Vicki. Any counselors have any questions? Counselor Chenoweth? No? Oh, you were like motioning there. Any questions?
That's exactly what I want to do. I'd like to motion.
Okay, let me finish. Okay. All right, do I have a motion for resolution number 2025-57, a resolution approving an addendum to the MacTown 2032 strategic plan?
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion from Counselor Chenoweth and a second from Counselor Tukalski. Any additional conversation here? Questions? Claudia?
Counselor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Aye.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
Resolution 2025-57 passes unanimously by a vote of 6-0.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we're up with ordinances. We're here to consider the first reading with a possible second reading of ordinance number 5165. Does any counselor need to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest or recuse themselves regarding this ordinance? And 5165 is an ordinance amending the Title 17 zoning of the McMinnville Municipal Code, Chapter 17.57, which is landscaping, and Chapter 17.58, trees, and approving the decision findings and conclusionary findings for docket G2-24. All right, so I don't hear anybody that needs to declare, so I would like to call on.
I'll start us off.
Okay. Wait.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm David Berniker. I'm the planning manager for the city. I'm joined this evening by Senior Planner Taylor Grable. We're here to present proposed changes to Chapter 1757 landscaping and Chapter 1758 trees of the McMinnville Municipal Code. This represents the second phase of the project, which focuses on the applicability and standards within these two chapters. This work builds upon Phase 1, which we presented to the Mayor and Council in May, and which addressed process and submittal requirements for landscaping. At this time, I will turn it over to Taylor to provide the formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Just stop you for a second, Taylor. Do you need to read the ordinance first or not? Was it okay that I read it?
We will have the staff report first, and then we'll move on
Okay.
with the script. You're doing it exactly right, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Taylor?
Great, thank you, David. As just kind of recapping what David already provided, we're looking at updating two chapters of the municipal code and Chapter 17 of the zoning ordinance. That's for the landscaping chapter and the trees chapter. That's phase 2 of a comprehensive code amendment packet that has been brought before you. In May, you already approved phase 1. There's kind of 4 key areas that we're looking at updating as part of this amendment. And I have a pretty short presentation for you. At the end, there's some additional resources if you have any specific questions. Otherwise, I'll just get right into it. So why are we doing this? On the screen, you could see sort of 4 reasons that the Landscape Review Committee, Planning Commission, and staff have brought this amendment forward to you. Really looking to align development with community priorities, establish clear and predictable standards. And this would be great for applicants because they'll really know what's being asked of them, and it'll be easier for staff to review. And then it's optimizing staff capacity. There'll be less reviews, less revisions, less on-site inspections required. So there's some real time-saving benefits that could come. And then it's going to contribute to a safer and more visually appealing urban environment across McMinnville. So here are some of the goals and objectives that the proposal will implement. And again, there's 4 focus areas, kind of identifies the sections of the code that we're talking about, looking at the purpose and intent, applicability, design and implementation standards, and then looking to allow staff to be able to do street tree plan review instead of it having to go before the landscape review committee. So that's something that the landscape review committee was really interested in as well, kind of getting their hands off of it, the current planning role that they've had and moving into something else. So this was approved by the Planning Commission on November 7th, recommended for your approval. There was no public testimony received during the process, and it was 8-0, recommending approval. The one little unique thing that's for you tonight is after the packet was released, McMinnville Water and Light requested a slight alteration to the proposed ordinance. They would like to add safety to section 17.57.070B8. You can see it on your screen. And it's important that we get safety in there because there's a specific code that they want to implement, and this update will reflect their standards. So we feel it's important that it's included. Here are your 4 actions. So we're actually recommending tonight kind of letter B, adopting the ordinance in an amended form to reflect what was shown to you on the previous slide. Here's the recommended motion. Are there any questions?
Counselors? Counselor Chenoweth?
So you mentioned in here what the Planning Commission's response to this recommended change was. What was the Landscape Committee's response to this recommended change?
Can you help clarify that for me?
Well, I don't know how to clarify that other than to say when I read through this, my sense is that the end result of these changes is that if the staff is now going to be making the decision on landscape review, and up until there's an appeal, and only then will it go to the landscape committee, which kind of leaves me with the feeling like, why do we have a landscape committee if we're upending the entire process where we had the experts on landscaping actually doing the work and then coming to you guys when needing further clarification?
Maybe, I think, Taylor, if you don't mind, because this was direction given to us prior to Taylor and David's stint here with the city of McMinnville. This process started in 2018 or 2019 based on direction we got from city leadership, and it was to look at the role of the Landscape Review Committee relative to our processes. So the Landscape Review Committee is not required by state law. It's not required, in terms of decision-making body, making decisions on landscape plans, which is a requirement of the Historic Landmarks Committee and the Planning Commission. They're advisory to the planning director, and the planning director's decision-making is considered an administrative decision, so usually it's just handled in-house by staff. For years here, the landscape plans were reviewed by the Landscape Review Committee. That was a lot of effort in terms of preparing staff reports, decision documents, getting in front of the committee and propping that committee up. And it also added time to the applicant in terms of getting a decision. So the direction we got was, how do you make the process more efficient? So we worked with the Landscape Review Committee for about a year or two to talk about that and what that meant. And it was agreed upon that they didn't need to review all the landscape plans if we had clear and objective standards under which these landscape plans would come in. So you need to, like a checklist, if you're doing the following things, you get approval. And so they were comfortable with that being a staff determination that the following things were done, if it's clear and objective, and that anything that was an alternative design path would still go to them for decision-making because that is where their expertise is landscape review. So it created efficiencies by removing those things which were clear and objective that staff could just do and do it in a timely manner with a lot less work for both staff and the applicant in terms of time. And then the landscape review committees being utilized for what they bring to the table, which is their expertise for that alternative design and discretion decision-making.
So that leads me back to my question, which was, did the landscape committee look at these changes, the current landscape committee that we have, look at these changes, and if so, what was their take and their view of what's being presented to us?
Yeah. So staff worked with the landscape review committee for a couple of years on the changes that were proposed to the planning commission. And then that went to the planning commission in November of last year. Then when we brought it to city council for consideration, we heard from some of our internal partners that they wanted to have the opportunity to revisit some of the changes that the landscape review committee had recommended to the planning commission. So we pulled it from city council and did another look at it internally. There were some tweaks done based on that additional look at the code amendments themselves. And those were deemed to be minor in nature that didn't need to go back to the landscape review committee to review those tweaks. So the bulk of the work and the bulk of the changes proposed are coming from the landscape review committee originally. That bulk of the work was tweaked in a minor way as it went through the process up to city council. Landscape review committee is aware of that. We've talked to them about it and they didn't feel that it needed to come back to them. Did that answer your question?
It does. I guess I wasn't here for the discussions that led to the place that, this is back in, you said 2018, 2019, that led to the decision that we were going to be drastically limiting, from my perspective, the role of the landscape committee. Mm-hmm. So that kind of hit me by surprise. I wonder, are we going to be having any discussion of with this council of what we want to see committees look like going forward?
Yes, we will.
That'll be a November 12th work session from 5:30 to 7 of all committees. Landscape, airport, DAC, historic landmarks, planning commission. Any committee we have will be on that agenda.
Okay, so I almost feel like I'd like to wait to vote on this until which time as we have that discussion to say whether we want what we want as a council to see out of our different committees, because I feel like this is really limiting what the role of the landscape committee is, and good or bad, I think a wider discussion on what we want out of the landscape committee should be had. So thank you for your time.
I would suggest, Councilor Chenoweth, so what you decided in May was actually the process to remove the landscape plan review from the landscape review committee. So that's already embedded in the code today, that change. And the change in front of you tonight is the clear and objective standards for the administrative review, to make the landscape review committee more comfortable that staff's doing that. So right now in the code, landscape plans are going to staff for administrative review. That process piece has already been voted on and approved and amended into our McMinnville Municipal Code. And this part is just the clear and objective standards of what people need to achieve in terms of their landscape plans. My fear is by postponing the clear and objective standards, we're still in this gray area of designing landscape plan, reviewing design landscape plans administratively without that expertise of the landscape review committee to do that discretionary review, unless we send them all to them again. But the applicant has the opportunity to choose whether they want to go to the landscape review committee or have it reviewed by staff. At this point in time, that decision was made in the May, what we call phase one, the May decision-making process.
And I appreciate all that you just said, and I thank you for saying it. I have buyer's remorse on my vote. So I think, and judging by nodding heads, I may not be the only one with buyer's remorse on my vote. So I would love to see this, just my perspective. I'm going to be a no vote in the hopes that we can have a discussion more about this at that November meeting and then figure out what we want to do, whether we made that right decision or not.
I can just say that I didn't know that we were getting rid of the landscape committee in May. I was not at that particular meeting, but afterwards and getting this, I didn't quite understand that clarification of what was happening in May. Councilor Peralta?
Mayor, Councilor Payne has her hand up too.
Or next. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to acknowledge that this originated with the Landscape Review Committee, so it as much as it did with staff. And the intent really was to create a more streamlined process for applicants so that they could get through these more quickly. As Heather has pointed out, we already have taken the action to remove this from the Landscape Review Committee's purview. So the next step to make sure that we have facially neutral rules for the applicants, like we can't have done the first thing and not do the second and still have a framework that works. So I don't think that there's anything that we might do tonight in terms of passing this that would preclude us from having a further conversation about that committee in a month. But I'm concerned for the same reasons that Heather is, that we've already removed that authority. So if we don't take the next step to give a facially fair process, where does that leave us? And I guess that's probably more for staff, but it's also just kind of a question for members of the board too, of the council.
Okay, Councilor Payne?
Thank you. I was just hoping, maybe Taylor can correct me if I'm wrong, but in my recollection of these Landscape Review Committee meetings, we did have extensive discussions on the necessity of the committee and the time required by staff and the committee to review particular and maybe really like very specific issues that could be moved through very administratively, very efficiently. And that includes street trees that are like tearing up sidewalks or damaging water lines or whatever. And then if the property owner is coming to the Landscape Review Committee and saying, hey, my tree's dead, it's pulling up the sidewalk or whatever, then planning or community development just proceeding with that street tree removal or replacement application rather than it going through the expedited, like we have to meet within so many days as the Landscape Review Committee. So putting time sensitivity on that when it's a very clear necessity that the sidewalk be replaced and XYZ happens. So that's kind of what started the dialogue. And in conversations with the Landscape Review Committee, it's become apparent that they want to do more community-facing work and encourage, the maintenance of being a tree city and include the Arbor Day Foundation and work with Soil and Water Conservation and the Extension Service to continue being an aesthetically landscaped city that also cares about the planet and the citizen well-being.
So, Jessica, are you saying, I'm not sure I understood what the Landscape Committee is, so you're implying that they would like to still be part of it or not be part of it?
My understanding was that they wanted to continue to be part of, especially like the commercial formatting processes, but not like Heather saying, like the very clear and objective standards related to street tree removal or applications that are very clear. Like when you're doing an extension of a neighborhood, Baker Creek Phase 1, Baker Creek Phase 2, you don't transition your trees from one subdivision to the next. So my understanding that it was more the Landscape Review Committee desiring to be involved in the commercial projects, the community-facing information, and kind of, I don't want to say PR because that's not the right, just community engagement. So and that's not how I read the staff report on this. How I read it was the Landscape Review Committee will be excluded from some processes and not others. But maybe I misunderstood that. And again, Heather or Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think recent discussion within the last year, while this has been a process, has been with the Landscape Review Committee. We're creating this kind of staff administrative review process to allow for the vast majority of applications to go that way so that they can focus on things like the Arbor Day event or helping with other code changes, comprehensive plan policy, like implementation. So that's what I heard. I think
And more complicated landscape plan review. So I did want to clarify, this does not eliminate the Landscape Review Committee in its existence and its role within the city. What it does is it's taking the simpler landscape plan reviews, putting them into administrative position for streamlining that and making it more timely. And then the Landscape Review Committee, it's going to take their time to do those education and awareness activities that we need to do for Tree City USA, and then a more complicated landscape plan review, as Councilor Payne described.
I don't think that description's accurate, because what this is going to do is put it in a position where, unless it's asked to go to the Landscape Review Committee, it doesn't go there. So it doesn't matter whether it's simpler or more complex. It's got to be asked for.
Counselor Gary?
Yeah, so I started in 2019, and not too long after that, I was a liaison on the Landscape Review Committee for a couple of years, where we had a lot of these conversations around the code. I mean, multiple meetings with no application, but just going line by line through the code with Fleckenstein, I think, was our staff liaison. And their mission, similarly worded, was actually viewed as providing clarity in the code to better define for applicants what they were expected to provide in definition of plans. People were providing hand-drawn, not-to-scale drawings with little to no detail, and we were trying to get more clarity and information to expedite the process by saying, you know, plans need to be to scale, provide these definitions, these dimensions, these things. And it wasn't, hey, can we get people through the process faster by removing most of our authority? It was, how can we make submissions clearer by creating clear and objective standards for those submissions? So, but again, my perspective, I oppose that, the stuff that came before us in May. So I'm still in line with that. I mean, you know, if you go to 1758-100, subdivisions, commercial, industrial, parking lots, multi-unit residential, it's just will be approved by director only. There's no application review process. So I think it, in effect, does remove the Landscape Review Committee from the process. So.
And if I may, Mayor, I really appreciate your point, Sal.
What are you doing here?
I'm talking to Councilor
Payne,
Peralta.
can you please turn off your mic?
Sorry, I shouldn't have said Sal. To Council President Peralta, I appreciate your point. I don't see waiting a month, and if we agree to do all that in our, as we go through the different committee discussion that we're going to have, if we agree that this is really what we want to do, they've got the code ready, they can bring it back to us, we can do it in one meeting. I don't see that being a hindrance, and at least would allow us to have the greater discussion about what we see is the role of the Landscape Committee before this happens.
Counselor Tukalski?
I'm not going to try to not dig this any deeper, but what I see is we have if we choose a 1 month delay here, I think that we could keep all of our committees consistent under the same, I'll just say evening and guidelines by which we're operating, and maybe we can create greater consistency among all of the committees which we're reviewing at a single time, rather than making an exception for one at this time. I would ask that we just delay this, knowing that we can bring the language back should we choose to do so. We've been operating under this condition for at least 5 months, almost 6 months now. I don't see that hurting, or I don't see that 1 month longer would hurt anything. That's my opinion.
Counselor Cunningham, do you have anything you want to share?
For me, I feel like we have given staff direction in a multitude of ways. I think over this last budget process, it was how do we streamline ourselves to help save money where possible. And I think that one of the big things that comes up with this is the amount of staff time we are asking our staff to take to create the staff report to go to the landscape committee does not, is not fiscally responsible when it's something that could be done in a way that is straightforward and organized. And albeit I'm hearing some concerns about the path forward of some of these committees, I think we are also asking of our staff every single year how to do more with less. And this is exactly how you do more with less. So to say we've already voted yes to move down this road, but now to press pause on a portion of it, I don't quite understand.
Okay, thank you for your perspective. Okay, do I have anybody, so we can either do a motion to a reading of this ordinance, or we can make a motion to pass and put it on the next committee agenda. Do I need a motion to do that, if that's what somebody chooses to do?
I think just for clarity's sake, Mayor, it would be best to have a motion considering the next step. I wasn't asked my opinion. I would recommend having the first reading tonight, and then we can continue the discussion. I worry that what is perceived as a short 30-day delay will end up taking significantly longer if we sort of reopen things up. And I don't necessarily know if that's the path that this is going to go. But we are in a bit of a risky gray area right now with having completed what I think it's the phase one, or however it was described, making some of these changes, and then we actually don't have the criteria, clear and objective standards for the criteria. It's my job to worry about very unlikely bad things happening, but that is a potential concern of mine. So that's my 2 cents, and the council can proceed as they wish.
So do you want to do the first reading?
That would be my recommendation, but it is ultimately council decision.
So we can do the first reading, but if it doesn't pass, then we will come back to a second reading later.
We could have the first reading tonight, and it could either fail or pass. If it does not pass unanimously, it would have to come back at a future meeting for the second reading. And in the event that it did pass unanimously, we could still bring it back at a future date for a second reading.
And if it fails?
Then I'll go fight you in the parking lot about it.
I mean, no, what's the next, my question is, what's the next step?
It would fail, and it would probably be Director Richards, but we would request further guidance from council at that point about how the council wishes to proceed if it did in fact fail.
Perfect, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion to read the first reading? Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Mayor, can I poll the council?
Yes, you may. Sorry, I keep going back to the old way.
Councillor Chenoweth?
Nay.
Councillor Payne?
Aye.
Councillor Geary?
Nay.
Councillor Cunningham?
Aye.
Councillor Tukolsky?
Nay.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
Mayor Morris?
Oh, This is my first one, I think. Oh, my gosh. I'm going to say nay.
Ordinance 5165 fails on its first reading.
Staff would appreciate further direction from council as to move this process forward.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Well, again, my recommendation would be hold on to these documents. Let us have our meeting on November 12th, where we're going to be discussing the direction of these committees and what we want to see from these committees. And out of that, and you could be right, we may be in a holding pattern that goes further than that. Fortunately, we're going into the wet months, which has a little less construction. But hopefully it won't go too much further than that, but that'd be my recommendation.
Do I have a second to that recommendation?
We can just take consensus on that, Mayor.
Okay.
And just, Council, if I can ask for clarity, since the first reading failed to even move to a second reading, that means that this effort failed, and if we were to amend the code in the future, so hold on to these drafts and amend them in the future, I'm assuming we'd have to go back to the beginning, notice DLCD, go through a public hearing process at Planning Commission, bring it up to City Council, because this action we just took denied the legislative effort.
I think because the motion was not on the legislative action itself, my position would be that the amendment has not failed. It's not even come to council. It's very strange to be talking to Heather and she's behind me, but then nobody can hear me if I turn around. So I think my position on the status of this is deferred for now, but not formally approved or denied at this time.
For clarity, that's if council moves forward with this code as presented. If council was to want to get into the code or landscape review to get into the code, then it would start the process over. Or no.
This one I can answer because I feel comfortable with it. If there's substantial changes to what's been proposed and recommended to you by the Planning Commission, then that would need to be renoticed and go back through the process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Figure out where we are here. I think we're done, right, Claudia? Are we, but not the urban renewal, but we're done with the council, or did I miss one? Okay.
With council, so you can close this.
So I'm now going to adjourn the city council meeting at 9:07. Okay. I'd like to call to order the McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency meeting at 9:07. And we have resolution to consider resolution number 2025-05, a resolution appointing a McMinnville Urban Renewal Advisory Committee member. Heather Richards, Community Development Director again.
Sure, thank you. So this is a resolution in front of you to appoint a member to MURAC that went through the same notice and solicitation of applications and interview process that the committee members went through in your city council meeting that we appointed to the Affordable Housing Committee. And the recommendation is coming from, the interview committee was comprised of myself and the mayor and Zach Geary and Walt Gall. And so the recommendation is coming from that group.
Great, thank you, Heather. Any council have any questions? All right, do I have a motion to, no, yes. Ask for a motion to consider URA Resolution 2025-05.
So moved.
Councilor Cunningham. Councilor Cunningham, a second from Councilor Payne. Any additional questions? Claudia?
Councilor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Councilor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary,
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham,
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky,
Aye.
Council President Peralta.
Yes.
URA resolution number 2025-05 passes unanimously by a vote of 6-0.
And congratulations to Lisa Allen for that. Okay, so now the city council will be going into a conference room for a close to the public executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602H. Consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Does any counselor need to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest or recuse themselves regarding these executive sessions for the record? It's in regards to Holt Homes. No. Okay. I will now adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency meeting at 9:09 p.m.